Hello, everyone. Omni-Sensei here with What If I Was Reborn in Marvel as Ben 10, Part 3. If you enjoy this kind of content, please smash the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Don't forget to check out the original story linked in the description. I hope you enjoy listening to it. Ben leaned back in his chair, spinning it lazily as he glanced at Peter. "All right, Parker, what's the deal?" His tone was casual, but there was a sharpness in his eyes that showed he wasn't taking the situation lightly. Peter, standing with his arms crossed, frowned. "It's Hell's Kitchen," he began, his voice heavy with concern. "I've been patrolling the area all week, and something's off. It's been too quiet. No muggings, no gang activity, nothing. That place doesn't just go silent like that." Ned, sitting nearby with his laptop balanced precariously on his knees, chimed in. "Wait, isn't that a good thing? Like, maybe the bad guys are on vacation or something." Ben stopped spinning his chair and fixed Ned with a serious look. "Ned, this is Hell's Kitchen we're talking about. If there's no crime, it's not because the bad guys are taking a break. It's because something bigger is happening under the surface." Ned gulped, realizing Ben had a point. Ben turned back to Peter, his expression sharp. "All right, what did you find?" Peter nodded, leaning against the table. "I've seen trucks, lots of them, moving in and out of the area. But here's the weird part. They're all empty. No deliveries, no cargo being loaded or unloaded. Just nothing. It doesn't add up. Empty trucks." Ben muttered, his brow furrowing. "That's odd. Anything else?" Peter hesitated, then nodded again. "Yeah, last night, I was near the docks. I saw ships offloading containers, big ones. But the whole operation was under super tight security. Armed guards, restricted access, the works. And they were moving those containers into an underground bunker." Ben's fingers drummed on the desk as he thought. That bunker must be their base of operations. Whatever they're hiding, it's big. We'll have to dig deeper." He swiveled toward the glowing hologram of Baymax, who was floating quietly nearby. "Baymax, check out the docks. See what you can find." Baymax's voice was calm and composed. "Understood." Initiating analysis. As Baymax processed the data, Ned's jaw dropped. "Wait a minute. That's Baymax. Like, the super intelligent AI assistant? Isn't that the one you give to people in your phones?" Ben smirked. "Sort of. The Baymax in the phones is let's say, a diet version. It's not even a real AI, just a glorified search assistant. This is the full package." Before Ned could respond, Baymax's hologram flickered. "Ben, I have completed the analysis. The ships originate from Afghanistan. After accessing their communications and internal documents, I've discovered something troubling." Ben leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Go on." Baymax continued, his tone neutral but the words chilling. "Under the guise of humanitarian efforts, these ships are transporting people, immigrants who believe they are being taken to safety. However, they are being kidnapped for illegal organ harvesting and human experimentation." The room fell silent. The sound of a loud thud broke the tension as Peter slammed his fist into the wall, his knuckles white. How can anyone do something so evil? His voice was low, almost shaking with anger. Ned looked pale, his laptop forgotten in his lap. "Organ harvesting? Experiments? This is insane. What kind of people even think about doing something like that?" Ben didn't respond immediately. He was staring at the hologram, his mind racing. Finally, he spoke, his voice cold and determined. "Monsters. That's who." He stood up, pacing the room as he formulated a plan. "We can't let this slide. These people need to be stopped. Baymax, keep digging. Find out who's behind this, where their operations are based, and how we can shut them down." "Understood," Baymax replied, already processing more data. Peter turned to Ben, his eyes blazing. "Whatever you're planning, I'm in. We can't let this go. Those people, they're counting on someone to save them." Ben nodded, his expression grim. "Agreed. But we'll need to be smart about this. These guys are organized, well-funded, and probably have a lot of eyes watching for anyone poking around. We can't just walk in there and hope for the best." Peter crossed his arms. "So what's the plan?" "Ned, you'll stay here and monitor everything from the rust bucket." "Ned, who had been quietly hoping he wouldn't have to get involved, let out a small sigh of relief. Okay, cool. I can do that. Low risk, high tech. That's my kind of job. Peter shot him a look. You say that now, but wait until Ben throws something insane at us. Ben grinned. Don't worry, Ned. You'll be safe. Probably. Probably. Ned repeated, his voice rising slightly. Ben ignored him, already turning his attention back to the hologram. Baymax, flag any suspicious movements or communications from the docks. Let me know the second anything changes. Will do, Baymax replied. Ben sat in his chair, staring intently at the hologram Baymax projected before him. The room was dimly lit, the soft blue glow from the projection illuminating his focused expression. Baymax, Ben said, his tone firm. Find any backdoor or hidden way we can use to get inside that bunker. Baymax's hologram flickered as it processed the request. Accessing blueprints of New York's underground tunnels. Searching for potential entry points. Analysis complete. The hologram shifted, displaying a detailed map of the docks and the network of tunnels beneath them. Then, Baymax began. There is a possible entry point through the underground water tunnels. These tunnels are connected to the city's drainage system and run directly beneath the bunker. You would need to breach this section of the wall. Baymax highlighted an area on the hologram to gain access to the bunker. Peter leaned forward, inspecting the map. Wait, you're saying we can sneak in through a drainage tunnel? How do we even get down there? Baymax continued. There is an access point near Pier 47. It is rarely monitored due to its proximity to the water. From there, you can follow the tunnel to this location. However, the final section is sealed by a reinforced wall. You will need to break through to enter the bunker unnoticed. Ben mumbled to himself. Looks like we know what we have to do. He stood up, cracking his knuckles. All right, here's the plan. Peter, we're going in through the tunnels. We'll secure the prisoners first, make sure they're safe, and then we deal with the people running this operation. Peter nodded, his face serious. Got it. What about the authorities? We'll need backup once we're inside. Ben smirked. Already thought of that. Baymax, send all the information we've gathered to Gwen's father, Captain George Stacy. Make it anonymous. He doesn't need to know it's us. Baymax replied instantly, information prepared. Sending now. Ned, who had been nervously listening from the corner, cleared his throat. So what's my job in all this? Ben turned to him with a teasing smirk. You're our eyes and ears. You'll monitor everything from here and make sure everything goes as planned. Ned nodded, trying to mask his nerves. Got it. Totally under control. Yep, I can do that. Ben raised an eyebrow, his smirk widening. You sure? You looked pretty freaked out earlier when I said probably safe. Not helping, Ben, Ned shot back, crossing his arms. Peter chuckled, but his expression quickly turned serious again. All right, so we're going in quiet, getting the prisoners out, and then calling in the cavalry. Simple enough. Ben nodded. Exactly. But remember, the people running this operation aren't amateurs. They've got resources, guards, and who knows what else. We'll need to move fast and stay sharp. Baymax added, I will continue to monitor the situation and provide real-time updates as you proceed. Thanks, Baymax, Ben said, giving the hologram a small nod. He grabbed his jacket and looked at Peter. Let's gear up. We've got some people to save. Peter adjusted his mask, determination written all over his face. Let's do this. As I walked over to a hidden compartment in the rust bucket, I reached out and pressed a concealed button on the dashboard. With a quiet hiss, a section of the wall slid open, revealing a gleaming metallic suit standing upright inside. Both Peter and Ned leaned forward, their jaws practically hitting the floor. Whoa, Ned exclaimed, his eyes wide. You've been holding out on us, Ben. Peter whistled, inspecting the intricate details of the suit. Is this your hero's suit? Man, this is something else. I nodded, stepping closer to the suit. Yeah, took me a while to design, but it's ready for field work. What do you think? Ned's voice was full of awe. Think? It looks like something out of a sci-fi movie. Where do you even get ideas like this? Peter tilted his head, studying the elegant curves and sharp lines. Seriously, Ben, I need to know where you get your inspiration. I've been trying to upgrade my own suit, and now I feel like I'm stuck in the Stone Age. I chuckled lightly, but my mind drifted for a moment. If only you knew this wasn't just inspiration, it's a memory from my previous life. I turned back to the suit, running my hand along its polished surface. The armor gleamed in shades of pristine white and radiant gold. The shoulders were adorned with angular, sharp-edged pauldrons that flared outward, giving it an almost regal appearance. The chest piece bore intricate, layered designs, with golden accents forming symmetrical patterns that converged at a central gem-like ornament, radiating energy. The arms and gauntlets carried the same balance of elegance and power, with pointed, golden trims extending outward in subtle arcs, resembling wings. The suit's helmet was sleek yet formidable, its faceplate dark and reflective, flanked by sharp, wing-like extensions on either side. The overall design carried a blend of futuristic and mythological aesthetics, like something a knight of another era would wear in a high-tech age. Peter's gaze lingered on the helmet. Okay, seriously, this looks like something out of a legend. Like a futuristic knight or a space warrior. I nodded. That was the goal, something that's both functional and inspiring. I began strapping on the suit, piece by piece, as Peter and Ned continued to stare. The armor fit perfectly, as if it were a second skin. Once the last piece clicked into place, I turned back to them. How does it look? I asked, my voice slightly muffled by the helmet's built-in communicator. Peter crossed his arms, nodding with approval. Not gonna lie, this makes me want to step up my game. You look like you're ready to take on an entire army. Ned gave a thumbs up. Dude, this is next level. I didn't even know you had this kind of tech lying around. I tapped the side of the helmet, activating its systems. A soft hum resonated as the suit powered up, and the HUD inside the visor flickered to life, displaying data and a tactical overlay of my surroundings. As I slid into the front seat of the rust bucket with Peter and Ned, I called out, Baymax, flight mode. Baymax's voice echoed calmly from the speakers. Flight mode transformation initiated. With a mechanical whir and a series of rapid clicks, the rust bucket began to shift. Panels along the sides folded outward, revealing sleek orange and green wings tucked beneath the truck surface. The wheels retracted into the chassis, while the front cab elongated and morphed into a streamlined cockpit. The once boxy frame of the truck unfolded like a piece of origami, transforming into a futuristic aircraft. Engines ignited with a faint blue glow as additional aerodynamic fins extended from the rear. The interior shifted as well. The seats adjusted, and holographic displays flickered to life on the dashboard, giving the cockpit a high-tech feel. Peter and Ned stared in disbelief as the transformation completed. Are you serious? Peter asked, his voice a mix of astonishment and amusement. You turned a truck into a flying plane? I couldn't help but grin. Yup. Ned shook his head, though he looked thoroughly impressed. You're the only person I know who would spend money to turn a truck into a plane. But it's cool. Really cool. I chuckled. I know it's cool. With the transformation complete, I gave the next command. Baymax, turn on the camouflage. Camouflage activated. Baymax replied smoothly. The rust bucket, now a fully transformed plane, faded from view as its stealth technology engaged. To the outside world, it was completely invisible. Ned's jaw dropped as he looked around, seeing only the cockpit interior while the rest of the plane disappeared. Okay, now this is insane. A flying invisible plane? Peter smirked. I have to admit, this is going to make sneaking into the docks a whole lot easier. As Ben and Peter moved through the underground tunnel, Ben's helmet HUD displayed the route toward the underground bunker. They both came to a stop at the edge of the passage, where a steady flow of water rushed ahead. Peter glanced at the water and crossed his arms. So, what now? Ben examined the blueprints and pointed. The water flows directly beneath the underground bunker. We have to swim through this tunnel to get inside. Peter groaned. Really? Ben smirked and turned to him. What? You afraid of water? I thought spiders could survive underwater for 30 minutes. Peter rolled his eyes. Some spiders. Not all. Ben chuckled. Well, this spider only needs to survive for 5 minutes. Peter scoffed. You really think we can swim that distance in 5 minutes? Ben shrugged. Ask yourself. I can swim through it like a breeze. Without another word, he tapped the Omnitrix, switching the dial to an alien form. The device lit up with an intense green glow, illuminating the tunnel. Peter instinctively shielded his eyes from the blinding flash. In an instant, Ben's body shifted, his legs fused into a powerful fish-like tail, his arms grew webbed claws, and his body became covered in smooth, amphibious scales. Gills formed along his neck, and bioluminescent markings glowed faintly in the dim tunnel. Sharp teeth gleamed in the darkness as he let out a guttural growl. Rip Joss. Ben announced in his transformed voice. Peter lowered his hand and blinked at the transformation. Okay, I don't know much about Ripjaws, but at least your bill and light bulb will help us see down there. Ripjaws narrowed his glowing eyes. Shut up. If you want to come, hold your breath and get on my back. Peter sighed, securing his mask, and latched onto Ripjaw's back. With one powerful flick of his tail, Ripjaws launched into the water, cutting through it at an incredible speed. The tunnel twisted and turned, but Ripjaws swam through it effortlessly, his body built for underwater navigation. Within moments, they arrived at a thick steel gate blocking the path. Peter took off his mask slightly, gasping for air. That was fast, Peter admitted, glancing up at the closed gate. Should I just pull it open with my strength? Before he could even finish his sentence, Ripjaws let out a guttural snarl and lunged forward. His powerful, razor-sharp teeth clamped down onto the metal, puncturing it with ease. With a violent jerk of his head, he tore through the reinforced steel like it was paper, bending and ripping it apart with sheer bite force. Sparks flew as the metal screeched under the pressure of his monstrous jaws. Peter stared, wide-eyed. Or, we could do that. Ripjaws smirked, revealing his gleaming, shark-like teeth, and gestured for Peter to follow him through the newly created opening. Let's move, he said, his voice deep and guttural. As they stepped inside, Ben tapped the Omnitrix, and with a flash of green energy, his body shifted back into human form. Instantly, his custom-designed suit materialized around him, sleek, metallic, and battle-ready, resembling a Power Ranger-inspired armor with a futuristic touch. Peter looked around, scanning their surroundings. They were inside a dimly lit storage room, shelves packed with crates and supplies. He turned to Ben. So, how do we secure the people? Peter asked. Ben adjusted his gauntlets. First, we need to cut their surveillance. They should have CCTV cameras monitoring this place. Peter tilted his head. And how exactly are we doing that? Ben smirked. Baymax, send the spy. From Ben's wrist, a small drone with the plumber insignia detached and hovered into the air. It was sleek, compact, and nearly silent as it zipped toward the doorway. Peter's eyes widened as he watched the drone maneuver effortlessly through the room. Okay, that's cool. I need one, except mine should be spider-shaped. Ben chuckled. Later, I'll make you one. The drone glided out of the storage room, navigating through the hallways undetected. It reached the security room, where two guards were monitoring the camera feeds. The drone latched onto the back of the computer, its small mechanical legs securing it in place. Within moments, the monitor flickered, switching to a black and white feed with static interference. One of the guards frowned. What the hell? He tapped the keyboard, trying to fix the glitch. Then, the screen suddenly returned to normal, displaying what seemed to be real-time footage. The guards exchanged a glance, shrugged, and went back to their post. Inside the storage room, Baymax's voice echoed in Ben's earpiece. Ben, the drone has rigged the camera feed into a looping sequence. You are clear to proceed. Ben grinned and turned to Peter. All right, time to move. Peter stretched his arms. Now we're talking. Baymax's voice echoed in their earpieces. Ben, Peter, I have scanned the underground facility. There are 27 hostiles. I am marking their locations on your HUDs. A digital map appeared in both of their visors, highlighting red dots moving through the corridors. Ben smirked. All right, Spidey, let's clean up. Peter nodded. Stealth mode. Ben flicked his wrist, and a compartment in his gauntlet opened, revealing a row of small, sleek, electric darts. I'll take out guards from a distance. You handle the close-range ones. Peter grinned under his mask. Oh, I like this plan. They moved swiftly through the corridors, sticking to the shadows. The first guard stood at the end of the hallway, arms crossed, completely unaware. Ben raised his arm, aimed, and fired. The electric dart whizzed through the air with pinpoint accuracy, embedding itself in the guard's neck. Instantly, a soft blue electric surge spread across his body. His muscles locked up, his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed, unconscious before he even knew what hit him. As the body hit the ground, Peter webbed him up and yanked him into a dark corner. One down. Baymax's voice came again. Two guards approaching from the left corridor. Peter grinned. I got this. Before Ben could reply, Spidey shot a web to the ceiling and swung up, disappearing into the rafters. As the two guards walked past, Peter silently descended upside down, wrapping his legs around one guard's neck. The second guard barely had time to react before a web shot into his face, sealing his mouth shut. Peter yanked the first one up into the air, knocking him out with a precise elbow strike, while Ben fired another electric dart at the second, watching as he spasmed and collapsed instantly. "Dude, this is way too fun," Peter whispered, webbing both guards to the wall. Ben rolled his eyes. "Stay focused." They continued moving, taking out guards with perfect coordination, Peter striking from above, hitting them from unexpected angles, while Ben systematically stunned them from a distance. Some never even saw them coming before they were webbed up or knocked out. Baymax's voice chimed in again. Final checkpoint for guards stationed outside the holding cells. Ben and Peter crouched behind a stack of crates, peeking at the heavily armed men standing outside a reinforced door. These weren't just regular security, they had body armor and rifles. Peter whispered, "Okay, these guys look serious. Any ideas?" Ben smirked. "Oh, I got one." He tapped the Omnitrix. The dial spun rapidly as he selected an alien, but as soon as he slammed it down, a bright green flash filled the corridor. "Wait, this isn't." When the light faded, Ben found himself looking at not one, not two, but multiple versions of himself, all grinning mischievously. Peter blinked. "Wait, what?" One Ditto looked at Peter and waved excitedly. "Hi." Another Ditto copied him. "Hi." A third one popped up next to Peter's head. "Hi." Peter jumped back. "Gah. Okay, this is officially the weirdest thing I've seen today." Ditto smirked. "Only today?" Peter folded his arms. "Yeah, dude, my life is wild. But you? You look like a science experiment where someone said, 'What if raccoon and catfish gins were to mix?'" One Ditto gasped dramatically. "How dare you? I am much cuter." Another Ditto hopped on Peter's shoulder. "And funnier." Peter groaned and swatted him off. "Okay, Ben Army, can we focus?" The Dittos nodded in unison. "Yup." Peter sighed. "Fine. What's the plan?" One Ditto smirked. "Simple." In a flash, all the Ditto clones rushed forward at once, but instead of attacking right away, they started causing chaos. One Ditto slid between a guard's legs and yanked down his belt. The man's pants dropped, making him stumble forward in confusion. Another Ditto booped a guard on the nose and said, "Tag, you're it," before ducking under a punch. One more Ditto jumped onto a guard's back and started singing, "I Believe I Can Fly," before covering his eyes and making him spin around in circles. Peter facepalmed. "Oh my god, this is so dumb." Then, without warning, all the Dittos actually got serious. One leaped onto a guard's chest and knocked him down. Another headbutted a second guard into a wall. One grabbed a baton and started twirling it like a pro before slapping the final guard across the face with it. Within seconds, all the guards were out cold. Peter blinked. "I take it back. That was brilliant." One Ditto dusted himself off. "Told you." Peter sighed. "All right, let's go." One Ditto stepped forward and slammed a fist into the steel door. "All right, let's get these people out of here." Peter raised an eyebrow. "You do know your Ditto from doesn't seem to have super strength, right?" The Dittos all collectively paused. "Right." Peter sighed. "Let me handle this." He walked forward, grabbed the edges of the steel door, and with a powerful pull, wrenched it open. Inside, huddled in fear, were dozens of terrified captives. Their eyes widened as they saw multiple versions of Dittos standing in the doorway. One prisoner hesitantly asked, "Are we hallucinating?" Ben quickly tapped the Omnitrix, shifting back to his armored suit. He raised his hands. "It's okay. We're here to get you out." Peter stepped in beside him. "Yeah, and we're the good guys. Promise." Ben, clad in his sleek suit, moved swiftly through the dimly lit corridor alongside Spider-Man, unlocking cages and freeing prisoners. The captives' children, young girls, and others were frail, their movements sluggish from prolonged captivity. Some struggled to stand, their limbs weak from malnutrition and confinement. The air was thick with the scent of fear and desperation. As Ben helped a young boy to his feet, Baymax's voice came through his earpiece, calm yet urgent. "Ben, the guards have been alerted. The patrolling units have not responded to calls." Ben stiffened and turned to Spider-Man. His friend was frozen in place, his entire body trembling slightly. Peter Parker, always quick with a quip, was utterly silent. That alone sent a chill down Ben's spine. Ben followed Spider-Man's gaze. At the end of the corridor, bathed in the flickering light of a broken overhead bulb, a woman stood cradling a baby in her arms. Her voice was soft, a whisper barely audible over the quiet whimpers of the other prisoners. "My baby, we are saved. We will go home. We will find your dad." She was smiling, a heartbreaking, fragile smile filled with hope. But the baby in her arms was still. Too still. No rise and fall of tiny breaths. No movement. The realization hit Ben like a sledgehammer to the chest. His breathing became ragged, his heartbeat thundering in his ears. He was still a teen, not a soldier. A mother, holding on to a dream that had already faded, unaware that the life she was clinging to had slipped away. Spider-Man's voice was barely above a whisper. "We were late." Baymax's voice cut in again, steady but urgent. "Ben, the guards are coming." Ben took a step back, his mind racing. He forced himself to breathe, to push down the suffocating grief clawing at his chest. This wasn't the time to break. This wasn't the time to mourn. His fingers tightened around the Omnitrix dial. With a swift motion, he activated it. A burst of green light enveloped him, and when it faded, multiple versions of himself stood in his place. Ditto, but with a different aura than usual. Gone was the playful, mischievous energy Ditto normally carried. These Dittos were furious. Their expressions were hard, their eyes filled with cold determination. There was no laughter, no childish banter, only a silent, burning rage. Without hesitation, the Dittos moved as one. Some bent down, stripping weapons from the unconscious guards. Others stormed into a nearby storage room, breaking open crates of confiscated arms. Then they turned. A dozen identical voices spoke in perfect unison, their tone chilling. "They have to pay for these." The sound of approaching boots echoed through the corridor. The guards had arrived. The first wave barely had time to react. A Ditto lunged forward, twisting a rifle out of a guard's hands before delivering a devastating punch to his gut. Another Ditto swung a stolen baton, striking an approaching soldier across the jaw and sending him sprawling. A third Ditto grabbed two pistols from a fallen enemy, flipping them in his hands before unloading precise, calculated shots at the guard's weapons, disarming them with near-inhuman accuracy. One guard raised his rifle, but before he could fire, three Dittos tackled him at once, their combined weight forcing him to the ground. A sharp elbow strike knocked him out instantly. More guards poured in, shouting orders, but the Ditto army was relentless. They moved like a well-oiled machine, a symphony of calculated strikes and ruthless efficiency. One Ditto flipped over a soldier, landing behind him and locking him in a chokehold. Another slid under an attacker's swing, sweeping his legs out from under him. A particularly large guard wielding a combat knife lunged forward, only for a Ditto to sidestep, grab his wrist, and slam it against the wall, forcing him to drop the blade. Before the guard could react, another Ditto delivered a vicious uppercut, knocking him unconscious. A high-ranking officer barked orders, trying to rally his men. His command was cut short when a Ditto ripped the radio from his hand and shattered it against the floor. One by one, the guards fell, some unconscious, others groaning in pain. None were left standing. Silence settled over the battlefield. The Ditto clones surveyed their work, breathing heavily. The rage in their eyes hadn't dimmed. The original Ben reappeared, standing amidst the fallen guards. He clenched his fists. This wasn't over. Baymax's voice came through once more. "Ben, the path is clear. The prisoners are secure." Ben exhaled, forcing himself to focus. He turned to Spider-Man, who had barely moved since the fight started. Peter finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "We have to go after them. The ones responsible for this." Ben nodded. "We will." And this time, there would be no mercy. Just as the last guard fell unconscious, a distant sound cut through the heavy silence. Blaring sirens, growing louder by the second. Ben and Peter barely had time to react before multiple NYPD squad cars skidded to a stop outside the bunker entrance, red and blue lights flashing against the grimy walls. Doors slammed open. Officers poured out, weapons drawn, taking defensive positions behind their vehicles. "NYPD, hands where we can see them." A familiar voice crackled through a megaphone, firm and unwavering. Officer George Stacy stepped forward, gripping the microphone tightly. His gaze locked onto Spider-Man and Ben, his expression unreadable. "Both of you, hands behind your head and on the ground. You're under arrest. If you move, we will fire." Ben and Peter exchanged a glance. The tension in the air was suffocating. This wasn't looking good. But before either of them could respond, a wave of movement surged behind them. The freed prisoners, children, women, men, all battered and weak but standing together, stepped forward, forming a protective circle around their saviors. A man in tattered clothes, his face lined with exhaustion, raised his arms and took a bold step toward the officers. His voice, though hoarse, carried undeniable strength. "If you want to fire on our saviors, then fire on us first." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. More people stepped forward, some gripping each other for support, others still trembling from their ordeal, but none backing down. The NYPD officers hesitated. Their grips on their weapons loosened. The reality of the situation sank in. They weren't looking at criminals. They were looking at victims, people who had been caged. And the ones responsible for saving them? Spider-Man and white suit guy. Even Officer Stacy faltered. He knew Spider-Man, had seen him in action, but this was different. Before he could issue a new command, a metallic clunk echoed through the tense air. Something small and spherical landed between the police and the crowd, rolling to a stop. Immediately, officers snapped back into position, raising their guns. "What the hell is that?" one of them shouted. A faint hiss filled the air. Then smoke. Thick, white fog erupted from the device, engulfing the entire area in seconds. Visibility dropped to nothing. Coughs and shouts of confusion rang out from both the officers and the civilians. In the chaos, a familiar voice crackled through Ben and Peter's earpieces. "Guys, get out of there. Now, Ned." Peter didn't hesitate. He grabbed Ben's wrist, his enhanced senses cutting through the blinding fog like radar. "Hold on." With a sharp yank, he leaped forward, dodging blindly reaching hands and disoriented officers. His grip on Ben was firm as he guided them through the maze of panicked voices and swirling smoke. Then, above them, a low hum. Something shimmered in the air, bending light unnaturally. The ship. The moment they were clear of the chaos, the cloaked vessel descended, its hatch opening midair. Ned's voice, urgent. "Jump." Spider-Man didn't need to be told twice. With a final burst of strength, he launched them both upward. They soared through the air, right into the waiting ship. The moment they were inside, the hatch sealed shut. The craft banked sharply, ascending into the night, vanishing from view just as the smoke below began to clear. Back on the ground, Officer Stacy stood frozen, watching the scene unfold. By the time the fog had fully dissipated, there was no sign of Spider-Man or Ben. Only the rescued prisoners, standing amidst the fallen guards. A soft hum filled the air, the quiet, rhythmic whir of machines running in the dimly lit lab. The glow of monitors cast faint shadows across the room, their screens filled with unread lines of code and data that no one was paying attention to. Ben stirred. His body ached as he shifted slightly, feeling the stiff cushions of the old sofa pressing against his back. He hadn't meant to fall asleep here, but exhaustion had dragged him under the moment he sat down. His fingers twitched, gripping at nothing, as his mind clawed its way out of the haze of sleep. Then it hit him. The images. The ones that refused to fade, no matter how much he willed them to disappear. A mother, smiling, whispering sweet nothings to the lifeless baby in her arms, rocking it gently, as if it would stir awake at any moment. She truly believed her child was still alive. The air in the lab suddenly felt heavier. Ben sat up, rubbing his face with his hands, trying to shake off the weight pressing down on his chest. He sucked in a breath, but it wasn't enough. His jaw clenched. His fingers curled into fists. He wasn't new to fighting villains, to seeing bad things. He'd seen aliens invade Earth in Endgame. He'd seen monsters that could tear through steel like paper. He had thought of threats that would terrify even the bravest of heroes. But this wasn't an alien invasion. This wasn't some monster. It was people. People who had done this. Who had locked up innocent lives, treated them like nothing. People who had ignored the cries of a mother who was too far gone to realize her baby had died in her arms. Ben gritted his teeth and slammed his fist against the sofa. The force sent a jolt up his arm, but he didn't care. It wasn't enough. His breathing was uneven, his mind still playing the scene on an endless loop. He could still hear the way the woman's voice trembled with hope, how she had looked at them like they were angels sent to save her and her child. But they weren't. They were late. And no amount of fighting, no amount of heroics could change that. Ben exhaled shakily, his hands running through his messy hair before gripping at the strands in frustration. "You're Ben Tennyson. You have the most powerful device in the universe, and you still couldn't save them all." He shook his head. No. That kind of thinking wasn't going to help. Ben forced himself to take deep, steady breaths. He flexed his fingers, unclenching his fists, and leaned back against the sofa, staring up at the ceiling. His heart was still racing, but the storm in his head had begun to settle, if only a little. A quiet snore broke the silence. Ben turned his head. Across from him, sprawled out on another sofa, were Peter and Ned. Peter was half sitting, half slumped, his mask discarded on the floor beside him. His breathing was even, but his expression was tight, even in sleep. Ned, on the other hand, was out cold, mouth slightly open, one arm draped over his face. Ben stared at them for a moment. He wasn't the only one carrying the weight of what happened. Peter had frozen back there, just as he had. And Ned, he had been the one pulling them out at the last second. They were all exhausted. Ben sighed, finally allowing his body to relax against the cushions again. He wasn't alone in this. Maybe they couldn't save everyone. Maybe there would always be moments like that, ones that left scars deeper than any battle. A dull thud echoed in the dimly lit lab as Ben's fist struck the sofa. Peter stirred, letting out a groggy grunt as his consciousness slowly dragged itself from the depths of sleep. His eyelids felt like they weighed a ton, and his vision was still blurry. His face was buried in the cushions, his hair sticking up wildly in every direction. He blinked sluggishly, smacking his lips before rubbing his eyes with the heel of his palm. What time is it?" Peter muttered, his voice thick with sleep. He pushed himself up, still hunched over, as he tried to gather his bearings. His sluggish mind barely registered the faint glow of the lab's monitors before his gaze landed on Ben. Ben sat motionless on the opposite sofa, his head tilted downward, his eyes lost in a haze of deep, troubled thought. Sweat clung to his forehead, and his breathing came in slow, heavy pulse. His fists were clenched so tightly that his knuckles had turned white, and there was a tension in his shoulders that made it look like he was holding something in, something dark, something that had been eating away at him since last night. Peter frowned. Without a word, he stretched, groaning as he stood up, his legs still stiff from sleeping in such an awkward position. He dragged his feet toward a small table nearby, picking up an empty glass and fumbling to pour some water into it. His movements were sluggish. He nearly spilled the water in his half-asleep state, but he managed. Once done, he walked over and held the glass in front of Ben. "Thinking about last night?" he asked, his voice quieter now. Ben didn't respond immediately. His eyes flicked up to Peter, as if he were just now noticing him. Peter could see it clearly now, the storm behind his expression. The way his jaw was clenched, the way his shoulders were stiff, the way his entire body seemed weighed down by something he couldn't put into words. Finally, Ben reached out and took the glass, his fingers wrapping around it with a grip that was a little too tight. He tilted his head back and drank, each gulp slow and deliberate, as if he was using it to ground himself. Then, he exhaled sharply. "Still trying to wrap my head around it," he muttered. His voice was steady, but there was something hollow beneath it. How people, humans, can be such monsters. A tired groan came from the other side of the room. "So, what's next?" Ned mumbled, his voice muffled as he slowly lifted his head from where he had been slumped against the couch. His face was creased from the cushions, his eyes still half-lidded with sleep. He let out a yawn, stretching his arms over his head before blinking blearily at the two. "We need to go after the big guys who did this, right?" Ben didn't answer immediately. Instead, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees as he rubbed his hands together. He stared at the floor for a moment, his mind clearly somewhere else. Then, he shook his head. "No." Peter arched a brow. "No." Ben exhaled and sat up straighter. "You two are going to college today," he said firmly. "I don't want any calls asking why you weren't in class." Peter narrowed his eyes at him, suspicion creeping into his face. "You're up to something." Ben let out a short, humorless chuckle, one that didn't quite match his usual playful energy. It was empty, mocking. "Relax, Peter. I'm not going to do anything," he said, but the smirk on his lips made it hard to believe. "We don't even know who's responsible for this yet. They're in the shadows. Until they decide to step out, we're stuck waiting." Peter studied him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, finally, he sighed. "All right," he said, though he clearly didn't believe Ben's words. "But don't do anything you'll regret." Ben smirked, but it wasn't reassuring. Ned let out a dramatic groan, rubbing his face as he pushed himself off the couch. Ugh, fine. We'll go to college. He shot Ben a pointed look. But if I find out you did something crazy while we were in class, I swear. Ben waved him off lazily. Yeah, he muttered. Go learn algebra or whatever. Peter and Ned exchanged a glance before making their way toward the exit. Just before stepping out, Peter paused and looked back at Ben one last time. Ben didn't meet his gaze. He was already staring off again, lost in thoughts neither of them could fully understand. Peter sighed and walked out. As the door closed behind them, Ben exhaled and leaned his head back against the sofa, staring up at the ceiling. His mind replayed the scene from last night, the woman cradling her lifeless child, whispering words of comfort as if her baby could still hear her. His fingers curled into a fist again. If the people behind this thought they could hide in the shadows forever, they were wrong. Ben reached for the remote and turned on the TV. The screen flickered to life, revealing a news broadcast already in progress. The studio was bright, the news anchors sitting upright with serious expressions. The lower third of the screen displayed the headline in bold white letters: Mysterious heroes save captive immigrants from bunker. Who was the knight? The footage cut to aerial shots of emergency responders at the scene from last night. The bunker entrance was surrounded by NYPD vehicles, ambulances, and floodlights. Freed captives, men, women, and even children, huddled together, wrapped in blankets as medical personnel checked their vitals. Some were crying, others were too exhausted to react. A news anchor, a woman in a dark red blazer, turned to face the camera. Good morning, New York. We begin today with shocking revelations about the horrifying discovery beneath our city. Last night, the NYPD, with the alleged help of Spider-Man and an unknown vigilante the public is now calling the Knight, uncovered a hidden bunker in which dozens of people were being held captive. The victims, primarily undocumented immigrants, were found in dire conditions, many of them malnourished and suffering from exhaustion after being trapped for days, possibly weeks. The screen changed to a press conference held outside the NYPD precinct. Officer George Stacy stood behind a podium, looking worn out but composed. Cameras flashed as reporters bombarded him with questions. A male reporter in a gray suit spoke first. Officer Stacy, do we have any leads on how such a large number of people were trafficked into New York without the authorities noticing? George Stacy exhaled, gripping the sides of the podium. As of now, the investigation is ongoing. What I can tell you is that this operation was well organized and well hidden. Whoever is behind this had resources, connections, and a network capable of smuggling people into the city without drawing attention. But make no mistake, we will find them. The reporters erupted in more questions. How many traffickers have been apprehended? Can you confirm if this is linked to international crime rings? What will happen to the victims now? George Stacy held up a hand to settle the noise before responding. We have made several arrests at the scene, including guards and suspected enforcers working for the organization. The victims are currently receiving medical care and counseling, and immigration authorities, alongside social services, will be working on their legal status and protection moving forward. The screen switched again, now displaying shaky cell phone footage taken from last night. The video captured Spider-Man swinging through the underground bunker, prying open cages, and pulling people to safety. Another video showed the moment the vigilante, now labeled the Knight, multiplied into dozens of copies, taking down armed guards with precision and unrelenting force. One of the news anchors, an older man with silver hair, spoke with growing intrigue. Now, let's talk about the so-called Knight. Witnesses describe him as having the ability to multiply himself, using his duplicates to disarm and neutralize the traffickers, which people are saying is a shifter but hiding his identity. This, of course, raises a few questions. Who is this person? What are his abilities? And most importantly, where did he come from? The footage cut back to George Stacy at the press conference. A different reporter, a woman with sharp eyes and a notepad in hand, leaned forward. Officer Stacy, do you consider the Knight and Spider-Man to be allies of law enforcement? Or do you see them as vigilantes operating outside the law? George Stacy took a moment before responding. Last night, those two saved lives. That much is undeniable. But law enforcement cannot condone vigilantism, no matter the intentions behind it. The NYPD is investigating all aspects of this case, including how these individuals became involved. As of now, we are prioritizing the victims and the criminals responsible for their suffering. That is our focus. The screen then cut to interviews with some of the rescued individuals. A young woman, barely in her 20s, with bruises on her arms and exhaustion in her eyes, clutched a blanket around herself as she spoke into the microphone. They came out of nowhere, she said, her voice shaking. We heard gunfire, shouting, and then the cages opened. Spider-Man pulled me out. I thought I was going to die in there, but he told me I was safe. The footage changed again, now showing an older man with disheveled clothes, his face still stained with dirt. He wiped at his eyes before speaking. The night, he fought like a ghost, he murmured. He split into so many of himself, and they all fought together. The men with guns didn't stand a chance. The screen faded back to the news anchors. As the public speculates about the identities of these masked figures, one thing is clear: New York has two new heroes in the shadows. Whether they are here to stay remains to be seen, the female anchor concluded. Here's the refined and immersive version of your scene. Ben's grip on the remote tightened as he turned off the TV, his mind still processing everything. The name Knight echoed in his thoughts, but it barely mattered right now. There was still unfinished business. He took a deep breath, then spoke. Baymax, have you found out who's behind all of this? A soft chime sounded in his earpiece as Baymax's voice came through, calm yet efficient. Sir, after extensive data analysis and security breaches into criminal networks, I have traced multiple connections leading to a single individual, Wilson Fisk. He is publicly known as a wealthy businessman and philanthropist, but within the underworld, he is feared as Kingpin. Ben's eyes narrowed. Fisk. I've heard that name before. Indeed, Baymax continued. Wilson Fisk operates a vast network of illegal businesses, but he conceals them behind legitimate fronts. His empire extends into real estate, construction, and even technology firms. He has successfully masked his criminal activities by using his corporate holdings as a laundering mechanism. Ben leaned forward, his frustration growing. Explain. By infiltrating encrypted financial records, I have uncovered a well-structured money laundering operation, Baymax said. It works as follows. Major corporations and government officials invest in Fisk's business ventures without realizing or sometimes knowingly accepting that their money is being funneled into illegal operations. The funds are then rerouted through fraudulent transactions. Ben's mind raced as he tried to grasp the full scale of it. How does he clean the money? Through an advanced double invoicing system, Baymax responded. For example, when a major retailer or tech company purchases inventory, they document it as 2 products per transaction when, in reality, only one product exists. The second product, which exists only on paper, becomes a placeholder for laundering illicit money. By forging documents and using corrupt government officials, Fisk ensures that these fake transactions appear legitimate in audits. The funds from his criminal enterprises are then funneled into these transactions, effectively turning illegal money into clean corporate revenue. Ben clenched his jaw. And the government doesn't catch this? They receive taxes on these legal transactions, and as long as the money appears properly documented, they have little incentive to investigate further. Fisk ensures that his companies pay just enough in taxes to avoid suspicion, while his network of bribed officials buries any irregularities that might arise. Ben exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. The scale of this wasn't just big, it was massive. So this isn't just about the trafficked people in that bunker. This is bigger than that. Correct, Baymax confirmed. Human trafficking is only one of many revenue streams under Fisk's control. Drug trade, arms dealing, corporate fraud, and political corruption are all interconnected. He operates not just in New York, but on an international scale. Many of the high-ranking individuals involved have vested interests in keeping Fisk's empire intact. Ben slammed his fist onto the table, his anger boiling over. So the entire system is protecting him? To a degree, yes. However, his operations rely on secrecy. If exposed, even his most powerful allies would be forced to distance themselves to protect their own interests. Ben's mind was spinning, calculating. Fisk wasn't just some crime boss running a gang, he was the system itself. The government wasn't just ignoring his crimes, it was benefiting from them. No wonder this had been allowed to go on for so long. Baymax, compile everything you have. I want every connection, every dirty official, every shell company. If we're going after Fisk, we need to know exactly where to hit. Understood, sir. Compiling now. The dimly lit office of Wilson Fisk was filled with the hum of multiple TV screens broadcasting the news. Reports of the night and Spider-Man exposing the underground human trafficking bunker were on every channel. The footage played repeatedly blurry shots of people being rescued, interviews with survivors, and shaky cell phone recordings of NYPD officers arriving at the scene. Fisk sat in his oversized leather chair, his massive hands clenched into fists on the armrests. His jaw twitched as his cold, calculating eyes remained glued to the screen. "This is a disaster," one of his men muttered, shifting nervously. The room was filled with high-ranking criminals. 4 of them stood by his side, each responsible for different aspects of his empire. Some ran his money laundering operations, others oversaw his merchandise humans smuggled in from overseas. But tonight, they had all failed him. Fisk's grip tightened, the leather beneath his fingers groaning under the pressure. Then, BM. His fist slammed into the desk, cracking the thick mahogany surface. The entire room jolted in shock. How in the hell did these two get wind of my operation? Fisk's deep voice boomed across the room, shaking the walls. How did 2 masked nobodies manage to undo what I spent years building? His men looked at each other, exchanging panicked glances, but no one dared to speak. "Speak, you useless sacks of shit," Fisk bellowed, his patience snapping. One of them hesitated before stepping forward, swallowing hard. "Boss, we don't know. The location was secure. There's no way the cops should have known. We had officials paid off, surveillance blind spots, we covered our tracks. It had to be someone on the inside who tipped them off." Fisk exhaled through his nose, his nostrils flaring like a raging bull. "Then find them. I don't care if it's a street rat or a politician. We bury whoever spoke." Another one of his men cautiously interjected. "The bigger issue is that this is national news now. Politicians are going to start poking around. Journalists are already demanding answers. If we don't get ahead of this, then we distract them." Fisk snapped, standing to his full, towering height. His presence alone was suffocating, his sheer bulk making the room feel smaller. "We shift the media's attention elsewhere. We make this little incident disappear." He turned to one of his top enforcers, a bald man with a jagged scar across his cheek. "Make a statement. Something big. I want bodies piling up. Give the police something else to worry about. Something so horrific that they forget about this entirely." The enforcer hesitated before nodding grimly. "How big are we talking?" Fisk's lips curled into a twisted grin. "A school, a hospital, I don't care. Make sure it's memorable." The room went deathly silent. Even his most hardened men flinched at the order. But no one dared to question him. Just as the tension reached its peak, a slow, deliberate clapping echoed from behind the doors. A voice, dripping with sarcasm, cut through the silence. Well, Mr. Porkhead. You just keep pissing me off." The double doors suddenly burst open, the force nearly ripping them off their hinges. A figure stepped into the room, bathed in the dim light of the screens. His entire body shimmered, made of a crystalline, almost diamond-like substance that refracted the light. Sharp, jagged edges lined his shoulders and forearms, making him look more like a living weapon than a man. Fisk's eyes widened, his usual unshakable composure cracking for a brief second. "How did you get in here?" Diamondhead smirked. "Oh, you're wondering why your little bodyguards didn't alert you? Well, here's the thing, Porkhead, you only get the information I want you to get." The men flanking Fisk immediately drew their guns, their hands shaking as they aimed at the intruder. "Put him down." One of them barked before opening fire. Bang, bang, bang. The gunshots echoed, but as the bullets struck Diamondhead, they shattered on impact, disintegrating into useless fragments. He didn't even flinch. "Really? Guns? Against me?" Diamondhead scoffed. "Cute." In a blur of motion, he lunged. The first man barely had time to react before a diamond-plated fist slammed into his gut, sending him crashing into the bookshelf behind him, splintering wood and toppling shelves. The second thug swung a baton, only for Diamondhead to grab it midair, his jagged fingers slicing through the metal like paper. He yanked the weapon from the man's grip before uppercutting him, sending him soaring into the ceiling before dropping like a sack of bricks. The third goon tried to run, but Diamondhead was faster. He extended his arm, morphing it into a razor-sharp spear, and swept his legs out from under him. The man hit the ground hard, his gun clattering away as he groaned in pain. The last thug desperately fired again. Click. His gun was empty. Diamondhead tilted his head mockingly. Oops. Out of bullets. Before the man could react, Diamondhead's fist shot forward, cracking against his jaw with bone-breaking force. The thug collapsed, his head bouncing against the floor as he wheezed in pain. Fisk remained still, watching as his men lay beaten and bleeding around him. "So," Fisk said, his voice low, "you've made your point." Diamond Head rolled his shoulders, stepping over the unconscious men like they were trash. "Oh, no, Porkhead. I'm just getting started." Wilson Fisk's worst nightmare. The dim glow of the screens flickered across Fisk's face, but he barely paid attention to the news anymore. His pulse was steady, but his mind was already calculating 100 different ways to turn the situation in his favor. His eyes locked onto the crystalline figure standing before him, the very same being who had just annihilated 4 of his men like they were nothing. And yet, Wilson Fisk did not flinch. Instead, he chuckled. A deep, rumbling laugh, low and full of menace. "What's your plan now?" Fisk leaned forward, placing both hands on his desk, towering over it like a lion staring down prey. "Kill me? That would be the dumbest move you could make." Diamond Head didn't move. He only tilted his head, his jagged edges gleaming in the dim light. Fisk smirked. "You think you're untouchable? The moment you walk out that door, you'll be a hunted man. The public's opinion will shift in an instant. Right now, they call you the Knight, a hero. But if you take me down?" He leaned back, spreading his massive arms. "Then you become a terrorist. The military, the government, hell, even the so-called heroes out there will have a reason to put you down." His voice was calm, calculated, filled with an undeniable confidence. "Face it, you don't win this fight. Even if you get out of here, you'll have a hit list on your back for attacking an influential American businessman." Fisk's smirk widened. "That's the difference between you and me." He tapped his own chest. "I own the game. You're just another piece on the board." For the first time, Diamond Head let out a chuckle of his own. A low, sharp laugh, like crystal grinding against stone. "Oh, Porkhead. I knew from the start that the law would never touch you." Fisk's smirk faltered. "Just a fraction. I know how this plays out," Diamond Head continued. "Even if I hand the world proof of every crime you've committed, the courts will drag it out for years. Trial dates after trial dates, until suddenly, key witness disappears, lack of evidence is discovered, and just like that, you're a free man." Diamond Head took a slow step forward, his crystalline body grinding slightly with each movement. "I can't bring you down with laws, Fisk, but I don't need to." Fisk's eyes narrowed. "What are you playing at?" Diamond Head smirked. He tapped his chest, a flash of light engulfed his body, and in an instant, the Knight stood before Fisk. The black suit gleamed under the dim light, his glowing visor displaying a single, cold white streak across its face. Knight walked over to the large monitor on the wall, reaching out with a single gloved hand. Tap. The screen flickered. Numbers and charts plummeted before Fisk's eyes. His company's stock. Dropping. Heart. His blood ran cold. No, they wouldn't. Fisk stumbled back, his massive frame wavering for the first time. His hands gripped the edge of his desk as his brain scrambled to process what he was seeing. They did. Knight's voice was calm, sharp, almost amused. "Your investors, your supporters, they're all pulling out." Fisk's breathing turned shallow. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Knight tilted his head, his visor glowing ominously. Fisk's hands clenched into fists. "They'd never abandon me. I have too much power, too many connections, and they like money more." Knight's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Your entire empire is built on their investments. The moment they think you're a sinking ship, they jump." "And, poor head, ***, Knight leaned in, lowering his voice. "You're sinking." Fisk's legs almost gave out. Almost. But he wasn't done yet. His rage built back up, pushing away the creeping fear. His massive chest heaved, his nostrils flared, and then, FWOSH. Fire. Fisk's breath hitched. In an instant, the Knight morphed again, his body engulfed in swirling orange flames. His black suit melted away, replaced by molten skin, a body made of pure fire. He blast. Fisk stumbled backward, his mouth dry. A burning man. A monster. For the first time, true fear flashed in Fisk's eyes. "Why you?" He stammered, sweat forming on his forehead from the sheer heat radiating off Ben's body. Blast took a slow step forward. The carpet beneath his feet started smoldering. "Fisk," he said, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "You have a habit of leaving marks on your merchandise, don't you?" Fisk's breath hitched. Then, a burning hand clamped onto Fisk's face. "Ag!" Fisk screamed. The heat seared into his cheek, not enough to melt flesh, but enough to brand him, to leave an unmistakable burn. He thrashed, trying to yank away, but Heat Blast's grip was like iron. The flames licked across Fisk's skin, scorching, branding, and then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Fisk collapsed onto his knees, panting, his body trembling from pain. His hand clutched at his now burned cheek, his eyes wide with horror. Heat Blast tapped his chest, a flash of light. Knight stood there once more. "Now, poor head," Knight said, his voice calm. "Let this be a reminder of your limits." Fisk shook, rage boiling beneath his humiliation. You think this is over?" His voice was rough, seething with hatred. Knight turned away, walking toward the door. "No, Fisk. This isn't over." He paused at the doorway, looking over his shoulder. "This is me letting you off easy." And with that, he was gone. Fisk remained on the floor, panting, his vision blurring from the pain. His hand pressed against his scorched cheek, his rage festering into something more dangerous. This wasn't over. The soft hum of machinery and the faint scent of chemicals lingered in the air as Ben and Gwen stood side by side in the dimly lit lab of Tennyson Dynamics. The overhead lights cast a warm glow over their workspace, illuminating the delicate circuit boards and prototype energy cells they were working on. Gwen, with her sleeves rolled up and a streak of grease on her cheek, carefully adjusted the electrode placement on the experimental battery prototype. Ben, arms crossed, observed her work with a mix of admiration and curiosity. "That should increase the energy efficiency by at least 12%, Gwen mused, tightening a screw. Ben nodded, impressed. "Not bad, Stacy. You might just be a genius." She smirked, wiping her hands on a rag. "Might be. I thought that was already confirmed." Ben chuckled, shaking his head. All right, you're a genius." There was a comfortable silence between them, a quiet understanding that had formed over the months since Gwen had joined Tennyson Dynamics as an intern. She wasn't just another employee. She was his friend, his equal, someone who challenged him in ways others didn't. And if he was being honest with himself, she was a whole lot more than that too. Clearing his throat, he hesitated for a moment before casually saying, "Hey, you want to grab something to eat after work?" Gwen froze mid-movement, the tool in her hand pausing over the circuitry. Slowly, she turned to face him, stepping just a little closer. The corners of her lips curled upward as she leaned in slightly, her blue eyes glinting with mischief. "Are you asking me on a date, Ben?" she teased, her voice smooth, playful. Ben felt his face heat up immediately. He quickly looked away, rubbing the back of his neck. What? "No. I mean, come on. It's just dinner." He coughed. "As a boss, to an employee. You know, being a caring boss and all." Gwen raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. Across the lab, a voice cut through the air, snickering. "Huh. Funny how we never get invited to these caring boss dinners." Ben snapped his head toward the source, finding a couple of engineers at a workstation nearby, grinning like idiots. A few others joined in, chuckling. Ben cleared his throat and tried to maintain his composure, but his cough came out awkward, which only made Gwen giggle. All right, get back to work, all of you." Ben grumbled, but the teasing smirks around the room didn't fade. Gwen shook her head, her laughter soft, her expression warm. "I'd love to, Ben," she finally said. Ben's heart skipped a beat, but before he could react, she added, "But my dad's picking me up today." For a split second, he almost forgot to respond. He managed a nod, masking his disappointment with a casual shrug. "No problem. Another time, then." Gwen smiled, the kind of smile that lingered even after she looked away. Another time. Big Brother's betrayal. Ben pushed open the mansion doors, rolling his neck as exhaustion clung to him like a second skin. The only thing he wanted was to collapse onto his bed, maybe even eat something first. But as soon as he stepped inside, he froze. Emily was waiting for him, arms crossed, foot tapping impatiently, and a glare sharp enough to cut through steel. "Oh crap." Ben scratched the back of his head, playing dumb. Hey Em, what's up?" Emily narrowed her eyes. "Don't what's up me." Ben sighed, already knowing where this was going. "Look, if this is about..." Emily cut him off, voice sharp. "You said you'd come to my school today, Ben. You promised." Ben hesitated. "Right, about that." Emily threw up her hands, angry but more frustrated than anything. "Because you didn't show up, the principal called Mom and Dad instead. He told them everything. And guess what?" Ben winced. "They weren't happy." "Duh." Emily snapped. "I got scolded for fighting, even though that jerk totally deserved it. and now Mom cut my allowance for a whole month. A month, Ben. Ben rubbed his temple. Okay, I get it. But in my defense, I was really busy today. Emily scoffed. Busy? Doing what? Ben quickly scrambled for a solid excuse. I had a meeting. With some big companies. Emily narrowed her eyes suspiciously. Oh, really? That's interesting. She took a calculated step forward and, in a sickeningly sweet tone, added, because I asked your assistant. Ben's stomach dropped. Emily grinned like a cat who just trapped a mouse. And guess what she said? Ben swallowed hard. What did she say? Emily's smirk widened. That you weren't in any meetings. You were just with Gwen. The entire day. I need to fire my assistant. Ben coughed into his hand, avoiding eye contact. Well, that's just inaccurate reporting. Fake news. Emily leaned in, grinning. Sure, big bro. You were totally not just staring at Gwen the whole time, being all shy and awkward. If this were an anime, a giant arrow would have pierced straight through Ben's heart. Ben groaned, rubbing his face. You're making stuff up now. Emily shrugged. Doesn't matter. You still ditched me. So, Ben exhaled, already seeing where this was going. What do you want? Emily's eyes sparkled mischievously. Give me your card. Ben's brow twitched. Why would I just give you my card? Emily's smirk turned devilish. Or, I could go online and post hashtag Ben 10 simping over a girl. Ben froze. The dark marks of frustration appeared on his forehead like a defeated anime protagonist. With a crooked, forced smile, he slowly reached into his wallet, gritted his teeth, and handed over the card. Take it, my sweet sister. After all, brothers work so their sisters can enjoy life. Who else am I earning for, if not you? Emily snatched it happily. Exactly. Glad we're on the same page. As she skipped away, humming in victory, Ben slumped onto the couch, staring at the ceiling in defeat. I just got extorted in my own home. Ben leaned back in his chair, resting his elbow on the table as he stirred his coffee absent-mindedly. Across from him, Gwen took a small bite of her pastry, a thoughtful expression on her face as she skimmed through some notes on her phone. The cafe buzzed with life around them. Soft chatter, the clinking of cups, and the hiss of the espresso machine filling the air. This is nice, Gwen said, finally looking up at Ben. A break from all the science talk. Ben smirked, setting his spoon down. Oh, you mean you don't enjoy discussing battery cell efficiency over coffee? Gwen chuckled. Not when you're the one rambling for an hour straight. Ben scoffed playfully. First of all, I wasn't rambling. I was educating. Second, that's rich coming from the girl who spent half an hour explaining the exact molecular structure of an experimental polymer. She rolled her eyes but smiled. Touché. Ben was about to throw in another quip when he noticed Gwen's gaze shift slightly, her brows furrowing. A ripple of murmurs spread across the cafe like a slow-moving wave, drawing his attention to his surroundings. He glanced around and noticed people turning toward the large TV mounted on the wall. Some had paused mid-conversation, their eyes fixed on the screen. Others whispered in hushed, urgent tones, pointing toward the broadcast. Ben turned his chair slightly and followed their gaze to the news playing on the screen. The footage showed a chaotic scene in the streets of New York, flashes of electricity sparking wildly, a metallic figure soaring through the air, and a red and blue blur swinging between buildings. The news banner at the bottom of the screen read, Breaking news. Oscorp break-in. Spider-Man in pursuit of unknown hostiles. Ben narrowed his eyes, watching the live feed. The camera panned over 5 figures moving through the streets. One of them, dressed in an armored flight suit with massive mechanical wings, swooped low, dodging Spider-Man's webbing. Another, covered in thick, reinforced plating with a massive horned helmet, charged through police barricades with brute strength. Sparks of electric energy crackled around a man's body as he leaped from a street lamp, bolts of lightning arcing from his fingertips. A fourth figure, shrouded in a sleek green exosuit with a large, segmented tail curling behind him, clung to the side of a building. And leading them was a man in a high-tech suit with a fishbowl-like helmet, surrounded by eerie, swirling illusions. Ben's frown deepened. He had never seen these guys before, not in any of the movies, at least. His mind raced. This world's Spider-Man was older, so maybe things had played out differently here. Gwen, still staring at the screen, exhaled sharply and muttered, New York is getting crazier by the day. Criminals, aliens, monsters, superpowered people, and now this? Ben turned back to her, tilting his head slightly. You don't like Knight and Spider-Man? Gwen quickly shook her head. No, it's not that. I know they're fighting for good, or at least, that's how they seem. But my dad, she hesitated, biting her lip before continuing, he sees things differently. Ben leaned forward, curious. How so? She sighed. He thinks vigilantism, no matter the intentions, is dangerous. That it sets a precedent, people taking the law into their own hands, acting without accountability. And with all these criminals running around, he believes masked heroes are just escalating things. Ben nodded slowly. It's his job. He has to answer to his superiors and keep order. Gwen looked down at her coffee, stirring it absently. Yeah, I get that. But sometimes, I wonder if he's wrong. But sometimes, I wonder if people like Spider-Man and Knight weren't around, would things actually be better? Or would criminals just have a free pass? Ben tapped his fingers on the table, watching the screen as Spider-Man swung past an explosion. That's the thing, isn't it? Even without them, crime would still exist. It might even be worse because there'd be no one to push back against these guys. Gwen nodded slowly, but then tilted her head. Still, why the hell would criminals break into Oscorp? If they wanted money, hitting a bank would make way more sense. Ben smirked. Yeah, because when I think of criminals, I think of investment portfolios and safe withdrawals. Maybe they were looking for a loan. Gwen rolled her eyes, laughing. Right, because banks just love giving out loans to supervillains. Ben shrugged. Hey, maybe they just have bad credit scores. Ben didn't say anything right away, his gaze drifting back to the screen where Spider-Man was still fighting. His gut told him this was more than just a simple break-in. Why would criminals break into Oscorp? Gwen mused aloud. It'd make sense if they hit a bank, but a research facility? She playfully nudged his arm. Or maybe, just maybe, whatever they wanted from Oscorp was way more valuable than money. Ben's smirk faded as he considered her words. That's actually a good point. If they weren't after cash, then what was in Oscorp that was worth the risk of breaking in? Something valuable. Maybe something dangerous. His mind started turning, piecing together possibilities. He didn't know much about this world's Oscorp, but if it was anything like the one in the movies or comics, there were plenty of shady experiments happening behind the scenes. He made a mental note to look into it later. Ben scoffed. Yeah, what's next? Supervillains robbing grocery stores for rare avocados. Gwen smirked. We're storming a toy store for exclusive limited edition collectibles? Ben leaned back, crossing his arms. Honestly, if I had to pick between breaking into a bank and breaking into Oscorp, I'd pick the bank. Way fewer angry scientists to deal with. Gwen chuckled, but her expression remained thoughtful. Whatever it is, they wanted something important, and I don't think they plan on stopping anytime soon. Ben had the same feeling, and he didn't like it. Ben stepped into his lab, stretching his arms as he let out a tired sigh. The familiar hum of machines filled the air, casting a soft glow around the dimly lit space. His eyes immediately landed on Peter, sprawled across the old leather sofa like a rag doll. His mask lay discarded on the floor beside him, and his suit, still clinging to his body, was torn in multiple places, revealing bruises and scratches underneath. His chest rose and fell in uneven breaths, and his face was contorted in a mix of exhaustion and deep thought. Ben arched an eyebrow. Damn, you look like you went 12 rounds with a wrecking ball. And lost. Peter cracked open an eye, scoffing weakly. Beating me? Please. You should see the other guys. Ben snorted but didn't press further. Instead, he walked over to one of his drawers, rummaged around, and pulled out a small container. Without warning, he tossed it towards Peter. Peter's reflexes kicked in despite his exhaustion, and he caught it midair, though he winced as the motion sent a sharp pain through his shoulder. He looked at the container and recognized the medical ointment inside. Apply that to your bruises, Ben said, plopping onto the front sofa, leaning back as he watched Peter struggle to sit upright. Peter groaned, pushing himself up, adjusting his torn suit with a wince. Ugh, man, this stinks. Are you sure this isn't just hot sauce in a bottle? He dabbed the ointment onto a deep bruise on his jaw and winced again. Ben smirked. Nah, it just burns because your body is weak. Should I call Aunt May? I'm sure she'd love to hear how her nephew got his ass kicked. Peter shot him a deadpan glare. Ha, ha. So funny, Tennyson. Ben chuckled but then leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. All right, for real though. What happened? Peter exhaled heavily, rubbing the ointment into another bruise. I was patrolling when I caught two guys breaking into Oscorp. I jumped in, thinking it was just another break-in, but then things went south real fast. Turns out, those guys weren't alone. By the time I started fighting, 3 more showed up. One of them could shoot electricity, like full-on taser fingers. Then there was this guy with wings, another with a mechanical scorpion tail, some dude with a giant blade, and one weirdo with a, get this, fishbowl for a head. Ben blinked. So, what you're telling me is, New York's crime scene just turned into a villain reunion special. Peter scoffed, shifting uncomfortably on the sofa. You're telling me. I was doing fine, you know, until Mr. Shock and Fried decided to turn me into a human battery. Then Baldy McScorpiontail tried to impale me. Meanwhile, the fishbowl guy kept pulling weird illusions out of nowhere. And oh yeah, Birdman was throwing razor-sharp feathers like some kind of medieval assassin. Ben leaned back, crossing his arms. So, 5 high-tech criminals just so happened to be at Oscorp on the same night, looking for something? That's too much of a coincidence. Peter rubbed his temples. Raid party was only 2 people initially. The other 3 just showed up when I started chasing them. By the time I could even focus on what they were after, they had already bolted. I barely managed to stop them from tearing the place apart, let alone find out what they were looking for. Ben frowned, tapping his fingers against the armrest. So you didn't see them take anything? Peter shook his head. Not a thing. They were searching for something, but whatever it was, they didn't find it. And trust me, I was a little too busy dodging lightning bolts and getting thrown through windows to investigate. Ben turned to the large screen on the lab wall. Baymax, pull up the Oscorp security footage. See if you can track what they were after. A small animated face appeared on the screen, smiling as Baymax's voice chimed in. Sir, I have already analyzed the CCTV footage. The intruders appeared to be searching for something specific, but they left empty-handed. I also ran a background search on the technology they were using. There are no known records of any companies developing such advanced gear, nor any recent purchases of materials that could build those suits. Only major corporations would have the means to even research that level of tech. Ben leaned back, rubbing his chin, which means whoever made those suits isn't buying their parts through legal channels. Someone's building these underground. Peter groaned, running a hand through his messy hair. Great. Just what I needed. A bunch of high-tech criminals with mystery gear running around. Ben turned his gaze back to him, serious now. Listen, if you run into them again, don't engage alone. Call me. Peter opened his mouth to protest, but Ben cut him off. I mean it. These guys have gear that even the military doesn't have access to. If they ambush you again, you might not be lucky enough to walk away. Peter exhaled through his nose and gave a reluctant nod. Fine, but that means you have to call me too, all right? No solo hero crap. Ben smirked. Yeah, I'll call you. Maybe. Peter gave him a deadpan look. Ben chuckled. All right, I promise. Now, get some rest. You look like roadkill. Peter let out a tired chuckle, shaking his head. Thanks, Doc. I'll be sure to send you my hospital bill. Ben rolled his eyes before turning back to the screen. Baymax, keep monitoring the streets. If any of these guys pop up again, I want to know immediately. Understood, sir. Peter exhaled heavily, leaning back into the couch. You know, I was hoping for just a normal week for once. Just classes, some patrols, maybe even catching a movie with MJ. But nope. Here I am, covered in bruises, dealing with a rogue gallery straight out of a sci-fi comic. Ben chuckled. Well, that's our world, Parker. Now shut up and get some sleep. Peter scoffed, but didn't argue. Within minutes, his eyes fluttered closed, and he drifted into much-needed rest. Ben, however, remained seated, his mind turning over everything they had just discussed. Something was off about this whole situation. He just didn't know what yet. But one thing was certain. Whoever these people were, they weren't done. They were after something. Ben had intended to head home for the night, but as he passed by his lab, he noticed the faint glow of a monitor still on. Curiosity piqued. He peeked inside and saw Gwen hunched over a workstation, fiddling with something. Raising an eyebrow, he casually leaned against the doorway. Hey, Gwen, need some help with whatever you're cooking? Ben's voice carried an easygoing lilt, but the suddenness of it made Gwen jolt like a cat caught in the rain. She turned, her expression tense, like she'd just been caught committing a crime. Oh, In nothing, she stammered, tucking a stray strand of blonde hair behind her ear. I was just, finishing up some work. What are you doing here? Aren't you usually home by now? Ben shrugged, stepping further inside. Had some things to wrap up. Thought you said you were going out with your parents for some wedding thing tonight? Gwen stiffened before answering a little too quickly. Well, the wedding got canceled. Plans changed. Ben tilted his head. Canceled? Why? Without thinking, Gwen blurted out, the groom had an affair. Ben blinked in surprise, then let out a low whistle. Oof. Feels bad for the guy. Gwen gave an awkward laugh, rubbing the back of her neck. Why, yeah, really bad. Ben chuckled at her odd reaction but decided to let it slide. Instead, he tilted his head towards the door. Want to grab dinner? Gwen hesitated for a split second before something shifted in her expression. Normally, she'd turn red or stutter out an excuse, but tonight, she met his gaze with an almost playful boldness. Sure, let's go. The restaurant they ended up at was a small, cozy Italian place tucked into the corner of a quieter street. Dim lighting, soft instrumental music, and the warm scent of fresh bread in the air. It was nothing fancy, but it felt right. Ben had barely picked up the menu when Gwen snatched it from his hands with a smirk. You always order the same thing. Let me pick for you tonight. Ben blinked, surprised at the sudden assertiveness. Oh, so you think you know my taste better than I do? Gwen leaned her elbows on the table, her smirk widening. I know you well enough. Just trust me. Ben raised his hands in surrender. All right, boss. Let's see what you've got. A few minutes later, their food arrived, and Ben was genuinely stunned. Not only had Gwen ordered for him, but she'd picked things no one should have known he liked, things he barely even thought to order himself. Okay, I have to ask, Ben said after taking a bite. How did you know I like this? I don't think I've ever ordered this in front of you. Gwen shrugged, her expression unreadable but amused. I pay attention. Ben felt an odd warmth creep into his chest. Well, color me impressed. As they ate, Gwen continued to surprise him. Normally, she had a certain shyness about her, a hesitance that lingered in the air. But tonight, she was different, bolder, more playful. She leaned in when she spoke, made teasing remarks, and even stole food from his plate with a cheeky grin. At one point, she caught him staring. What? Ben shook his head, smirking. Nothing. Just not used to this side of you. Gwen rested her chin on her hand, gazing at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Maybe you just never looked hard enough. For a brief moment, time seemed to slow. The sounds of the restaurant faded, the warm glow of the candle between them flickering softly. There was something in the air, unspoken but heavy with meaning. Ben exhaled, breaking the moment with a chuckle. Guess I'll have to start paying more attention, huh? Gwen laughed, and just like that, the moment passed. But something lingered. Something unspoken, but understood. Gwen smirked as she slid a plate toward him. Here, try this. I ordered it for you. Ben arched a brow, slightly amused but also genuinely curious. He hadn't even looked at the menu when she ordered. You ordered for me? Gwen rested her chin on her palm, watching him intently. Yeah, you always pretend to be indecisive, but I've seen what you like. Just eat. Ben took a bite, and his eyes widened. It was perfect. The exact balance of flavors he loved. He swallowed and leaned back with a smirk. All right, Gwen Stacy. I see you've been doing some detective work on me. She laughed softly, stirring her drink with her straw. Maybe I have. Maybe I just know you better than you think. Ben couldn't stop grinning. The conversation flowed effortlessly, teasing remarks, small moments of silence that weren't awkward, but instead comfortable. He had gone on dates before, sure, but nothing quite like this. There was something about tonight that felt right. And then, at the worst possible moment, his phone buzzed. Ben groaned, already dreading whatever was about to pull him away from this perfect night. He pulled the phone from his pocket and saw Peter's name on the screen. Ugh, Ben muttered. Of course, it's him. Gwen tilted her head. Work. Let's find out, Ben said before answering. Yeah, Pete, what is it? Peter's voice was tense, urgent. Ben, I found them. They're in an abandoned factory on the west side. Come quick. Ben's mood plummeted instantly. His expression fell, and he exhaled through his nose, rubbing his forehead. Damn, man. Your timing sucks. Can't this wait until tomorrow? Peter sounded dumbfounded. No? What, are you seriously asking me that right now? You coming, or am I doing this solo? Ben sighed heavily, pinching the bridge of his nose. All right, chill. I'm coming. He ended the call and looked at Gwen, guilt creeping into his face. It's work. Gwen leaned back in her chair, observing him carefully. I figured. You suddenly look like you've been told to leave your own birthday party. Ben ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I want to drop you home, but Gwen cut him off before he could finish. Don't worry about it, she said, her voice calm but firm. I'll grab a taxi. Work is important. Ben frowned, feeling like absolute crap. I promise this won't happen again. Gwen gave a small smile, but there was something behind it. Something he couldn't quite place. Then, as he stood up, ready to leave, she whispered under her breath, Don't promise something you can't keep, Ben. But Ben was already gone, running toward his car. He didn't hear it. Gwen watched as he disappeared into the night, her fingers lightly tracing the rim of her glass. The restaurant's ambient noise filled the silence he left behind, but her mind was elsewhere. The city lights blurred past as Ben's car raced through the streets, tires screeching against the asphalt. His grip tightened on the steering wheel, his knuckles turning white as he pushed the car's speed to its limit. The GPS on the dashboard blinked, showing the coordinates Peter had sent, guiding him toward an abandoned factory on the outskirts of the city. Ben exhaled sharply, his mind running through the situation. If Peter needed backup, things had to be serious. His fingers moved to the Omnitrix on his wrist. With a swift tap, a green glow spread over his body. In an instant, his casual clothes were replaced by the sleek, high-tech white suit. The transformation was smooth, almost second nature now, an upgrade he had integrated using gray matter's genius. The moment the suit fully formed, his car's panel lit up with an incoming call. Peter's voice came through, frantic, breathless. Ben, it'd really help if you got here right now. In the background, chaos erupted. The sharp crackle of electricity, the sound of metal shattering, followed by a loud crash. Ben could even hear Peter grunt, likely dodging an incoming attack. Ben cursed under his breath. Dude, you can't hold on for 5 minutes? My bad, man. But unless you want fried spider for dinner, get here fast. Peter yelled, the call cutting off with the sound of something exploding in the background. Ben narrowed his eyes. He slammed his foot down on the accelerator. The car roared forward, weaving through traffic like a blur of white and black. His mind sharpened, no distractions now. As the factory loomed ahead, Ben mentally prepped himself. If Peter was struggling, that meant whoever they were fighting wasn't just some average thug. And that meant Ben wasn't holding back. The abandoned factory was a war zone. Broken machinery, shattered beams, and piles of debris littered the space, illuminated only by the flickering sparks of loose electrical wires and the occasional burst of lightning from Electro. Peter Parker could feel it in the way his muscles screamed in protest. His breath came in ragged gasps, and his suit, already torn and scorched, barely clung to his body. The fight had dragged on longer than he'd hoped, and with every passing second, his odds of survival shrank. And yet, he smiled. Man, Peter huffed, rolling his shoulders as he dodged another wild swing from Rhino. You guys sure know how to make a guy feel special. What's the occasion? Villain team-building retreat? Group therapy session? Rhino snarled, wiping webbing from his face. Enough talk, insect. I crush you now. Peter's spider sense flared. A shadow moved in the corner of his eye too late. A green mist exploded from above, spreading through the factory like a thick fog, making the entire battlefield shift and distort. Peter's vision blurred. The broken machinery melted into a surreal landscape of twisting illusions. The walls of the factory seemed to stretch infinitely, and the villains around him distorted, growing larger, monstrous. Peter groaned, pressing his fingers against his temples. Oh, great, he muttered. And here I was hoping for just the regular bunch of lunatics. A deep chuckle echoed through the fog. Ah, Spider-Man, a voice purred. Still so naive. So predictable. Peter narrowed his eyes. That voice, he didn't recognize it. Dude, what? Still naive and predictable? This is the second time we're meeting. Don't start forming relationships with me. The illusionist stepped forward, his flowing cape billowing around him, the glowing fishbowl helmet on his head pulsing with eerie green light. His holograms danced through the air, twisting the environment into a nightmarish dreamscape. Peter hated fighting these fishbowls. Not because they were particularly powerful, but because they were a headache. You know, fishbowl, Peter groaned, shaking his head as the world around him twisted. Ever thought of opening an amusement park? Your visuals are great, but your execution? Kinda overdone. Mysterio smirked beneath his helmet, waving a hand. The illusion shifted. Spider-Man saw dozens of versions of himself, all tangled in webs, trapped, defeated. Peter's stomach churned. These weren't his memories, but they felt personal. Illusions or not, Peter muttered, tightening his fists, I'm still gonna kick your fishbowl. Before he could make a move, a heavy force slammed into his back. Peter grunted as he crashed to the ground, rolling over just in time to see a massive figure towering over him. His chest tightened. The man was huge, clad in a thick fur-lined vest, his muscular arms covered in scars from countless hunts. A serrated hunting knife gleamed in his grip, and his piercing, predatory eyes locked onto Peter with amusement. Kraven grinned. Finally, a worthy hunt. Peter groaned, wiping blood from his lip. Oh, come on. I don't even taste good. Don't eat everything you see. Kraven lunged. Peter rolled, narrowly avoiding a dagger strike aimed at his throat. He kicked up, aiming for Kraven's chest, but the hunter barely staggered, grabbing Peter's leg midair and slamming him into the ground. Hard. Peter choked, his vision swimming from the impact. Kraven pressed his knee against Peter's chest, pinning him down. You have eluded me for too long, Spider, Kraven said, a savage grin on his face. Tonight, the hunt ends. Peter struggled, gritting his teeth. He couldn't break free. Dude, again? First time seeing you. Above him, Electro gathered another surge of energy, his hands crackling with raw electricity. Hold him still, Electro grinned. Let's fry the bug. Peter's mind raced. He was pinned, surrounded, and his body was too battered to keep dodging forever. And then, a bright green flash ignited the room. A surge of electricity crackled in the air, but not from Electro. The villains turned just in time to see something absorbing the energy. A figure clad in black and green, its sleek form pulsing with luminous circuits, long tendrils extending from its back, draining Electro's attack like a sponge. A distorted, crackling voice filled the air. You should be more careful with that. Someone could get hurt. Kraven's eyes narrowed. Mysterio's illusions flickered. Electro's jaw tightened. And Peter? He smirked. The factory crackled with tension. Sparks flew from broken machinery, the flickering lights barely illuminating the five figures surrounding Ben and Spider-Man. Ben exhaled, rolling his shoulders as electricity pulsed through his feedback form. Peter, battered but still standing, shot him a sideways glance. So, you know these guys? Peter muttered. Ben shook his head. Never seen them before in my life. Rhino stomped forward, cracking his knuckles. You sure about that, Ben? Ben froze. Peter's head snapped toward him. Wait, what? Rhino grinned, sensing the hesitation. Oh yeah, we know all about you, kid. His voice dripped with amusement, like he was savoring the confusion on Ben's face. You might not know us, but we know you. Ben's fingers twitched. His mind raced, but he kept his face neutral. Yeah? Then you know I don't like people talking in riddles. He moved. A green flash ignited the room as Ben lunged forward, closing the distance in a blink. He grabbed Rhino's arm, his tendrils snapping onto the villain's body. Where do you know me from? Ben growled. A surge of bioelectricity shocked through Rhino's thick skin, sending the brute staggering backward with a roar of pain. But even as he recovered, he grinned. Wouldn't you like to know? Ben gritted his teeth. Yeah, actually. That's kinda why I asked. Before he could press further, a yellow blur streaked through the air. Electro. Heads up, Peter yelled. Ben barely had time to react before a bolt of lightning slammed into his chest. But instead of staggering, he absorbed it, his suit glowing with stored energy. Electro cursed. TCH, forgot about that. Ben smirked. Don't worry, I'll remind you. He redirected the electricity back, twice as strong. The bolt tore through the air, slamming into Electro and sending him skidding across the factory floor. Ben turned back to Rhino. All right, big guy. Let's try this again. Where do you know me from? Before Rhino could respond, a metal whip lashed out. Ben dodged just in time as Scorpion's tail cracked into the concrete, splitting it like glass. You asked too many questions, Ben, Scorpion sneered. Maybe we should shut you up. Ben's eyes narrowed. Why do you know my name? Wouldn't you like to know? Mysterio's voice slithered through the room. A burst of green smoke erupted, and suddenly, the factory shifted. The walls stretched and warped. The ground beneath Ben's feet twisted into something unnatural. The flickering lights transformed into eerie green flames. His own reflection stared back at him from a dozen different angles. Ben clenched his fists. Great. The fishbowl's doing his thing. Thing? Oh no, Ben, Mysterio's voice echoed from all directions. This is much more than a thing. The illusion solidified. From the smoke, twisted versions of himself emerged. A dozen feedbacks, each crackling with unstable energy. Ben's chest tightened. He knew these weren't real, but the feeling of them was too lifelike. And then they spoke. You think you're the only Ben in the multiverse? One of them taunted. Ben's blood ran cold. Multiverse. Before he could process the words, one of the illusions lunged. Ben reacted on instinct, blasting it apart, but another took its place. Spider-Man's voice cut through the chaos. Ben, none of it is real. Yeah, I know, Ben muttered. He reached out, his tendrils crackling. He wasn't just going to dodge this time. He was going to break it. With a deep breath, he absorbed the ambient energy from Mysterio's illusions. The green smoke pulsed, flickered, then shattered like glass. The real world came rushing back. And standing in the center of it all, Mysterio stumbled back, his suit sparking. Ben cracked his knuckles. You want to keep playing mind games, or do we skip to the part where I win? Mysterio didn't respond, but Vulture did. From above, razor-sharp talons came slicing down. Ben barely dodged, rolling just as the metal claws ripped through the ground where he stood. Vulture circled overhead. TCH, fast, but not fast enough. Ben exhaled sharply. All right. His patience was gone. I'll ask one last time. His body flared with power, the air around him distorting with the sheer voltage surging through his veins. Who are you people? How do you know me? The villains only smirked. You'll find out soon enough, Electro sneered. But you won't like the answer. Ben's jaw clenched. Yeah? Well, let's see if you like this. He attacked. Ben's patience was gone. His body hummed with barely contained energy, the tendrils on his back snapping with crackling voltage. He didn't care who these guys were or how they knew his name. Right now, they were getting their asses kicked. Ben moved. He blurred forward with inhuman speed, closing the distance between him and Electro in a heartbeat. The electric villain barely had time to react before Ben's fist, supercharged with raw energy, slammed into his gut. A boom echoed through the factory as Electro was sent flying, his body crashing through a rusted scaffold and slamming into the far wall. Ben didn't stop. Vulture swooped in, talons outstretched, aiming for his back. But Ben anticipated it. At the last second, his tendrils snapped up, grabbing Vulture by the legs in midair. Yeah, no, not today. With a whip of his tendrils, he slammed Vulture into the ground like a sack of bricks. The impact left a dent in the concrete, and the winged menace groaned in pain. Rhino, meanwhile, had recovered. With a furious snarl, he charged again, his massive form an unstoppable force barreling straight toward Ben. This time, Ben didn't dodge. He caught Rhino head-on. Electricity surged through his body as he absorbed the momentum of the charge, his feet digging into the ground as he held Rhino in place. Sparks exploded from the impact, concrete cracking beneath him. Rhino's eyes widened in shock. What the? Ben smirked. What's wrong? Not used to someone stopping your bullshit. With a grunt, Ben launched Rhino backward. The brute crashing straight into Scorpion, sending them both tumbling into a pile of debris. Peter, watching from the side, let out a low whistle. All right, remind me never to piss you off. Noted, Ben quipped. But the fight wasn't over yet. Mysterio was the last one standing. He exhaled, his fishbowl helmet pulsing with eerie green light. TCH. I hate brute force. With a flick of his wrist, a wave of green mist exploded outward, swallowing the factory once more. Illusions flooded back, twisting, shifting, reality itself distorting. Peter staggered. Ugh, not this again, but Ben wasn't playing games anymore. He extended his hands, his tendrils glowing white-hot. Then he absorbed everything. The illusions flickered, glitched, then shattered completely, the green fog vanishing in an instant. Mysterio stumbled back, eyes wide. What? Ben's eyes glowed an eerie green as he stepped toward him. Guess what, fishbowl? I don't do magic tricks. Mysterio didn't wait around. He turned on his heel and ran. Electro, still smoldering from Ben's attack, groaned as he got up, looking at the destruction. Screw this. We're out. Vulture staggered to his feet, flaring his wings. Agreed. Scorpion hissed in frustration, but even he knew when to call it quits. Rhino, though battered, pushed himself up with a snarl. This ain't over. Ben smirked. Oh, it really is. Before he could chase them down, a sudden boom echoed through the factory. A thick smoke bomb detonated, covering the entire battlefield in a dense, black cloud. By the time it cleared, the villains were gone. Silence filled the air. Ben exhaled, rolling his shoulders. Cowards. Peter dusted himself off. Yeah, but smart cowards. I wouldn't stick around if I just got my ass kicked either. Ben clenched his fists. They were gone, but not forgotten. Because those bastards knew his name. And sooner or later, he was going to find out why. Ben glanced at Peter. You good, man? Peter wiped some dust off his torn suit, wincing slightly. Yeah, just some bruises here and there. Nothing major. Ben nodded, exhaling as he unlocked the car. Let's get out of here. The two got in, the engine roaring to life as Ben pulled out onto the road. The city lights flickered past, their reflections dancing over the windshield. The air was heavy, filled with questions neither of them had answers to. Ben broke the silence first. Did you get any leads when you were fighting them? Any clue what they were after? Peter sighed, shaking his head. No, man. Not a clue. I was hoping you knew, considering they knew your name. Ben's grip on the wheel tightened. Yeah, that part is what's bothering me the most. He inhaled deeply. Do you know what one of them said to me? Multiverse. Peter's head snapped toward him. Wait, what? Ben nodded. Yeah, he said, you're not the only Ben in the multiverse. Peter's eyes widened. You mean, like the theory? Different dimensions, alternate versions of our world, that multiverse? Ben took a sharp turn, his mind racing. I don't know, man. How the hell am I supposed to trust anything a villain says? Peter nodded. That's fair. But what if it's true? Ben frowned. If it's true, then I have a bigger question. Why the hell was my Ben out there showing his face to villains? And how did they all end up in this universe at the same time? His jaw clenched. I always thought I was an anomaly. Just one guy reincarnated in this world by that so-called god. But no. His fingers drummed on the wheel as he muttered under his breath. Did that bastard reincarnate multiple versions of me across the multiverse? How the hell does that even work? Peter waved a hand in front of his face. Ben. Ben snapped back to reality, blinking. Huh, you weren't even listening. You were just driving in autopilot mode. Yeah, sorry, Ben muttered. Was lost in thought. Peter rolled his eyes. Well, focus up. Look what I snagged during the fight. He pulled something from his belt, a gun-like device, clearly damaged, its wires sparking weakly. Ben's foot slammed on the brakes. The tires screeched as the car skidded to a stop on the side of the road. Peter flinched. Dude, warn me before you do that. But Ben wasn't listening. His eyes were glued to the device as he snatched it from Peter's hands. His fingers traced over the design, his expression darkening with every second. Peter frowned. Ben. Ben exhaled slowly. Now I know they came from the multiverse. Peter raised an eyebrow. And you figured that out just by looking at that? Ben nodded. Because this is something straight out of my own bucket list of projects. Peter blinked. Wait, what? Ben turned the device over, inspecting the broken mechanisms. This is a null void gun. Peter stared blankly. Null what now? Ben glanced at him. The null void. It's a prison, a separate dimension designed to trap the worst criminals. A place where they can never escape. Peter's jaw dropped. You mean, like, a Super Axe prison, but in a different dimension? Exactly. Peter looked back at the gun. So, if they had this, that means Ben nodded. They have access to interdimensional travel. And if this thing is based on my design, then maybe they used it to travel across the multiverse itself. Peter's eyes widened. Dude, that's it. And if this thing is based on your design, then maybe they used it to travel across the multiverse itself. Ben's mind raced. You're right. Your genius, Peter, his fingers traced over the broken gun, his thoughts spinning. They might have used this as a multiversal gateway. Peter grinned. So, can we fix it? Ben exhaled. We can try, but not tonight. It's too late for this kind of madness. Peter leaned back. Fair. My brain's already fried from all the near-death experiences today. Ben smirked, putting the car back into drive. Let's crash for the night. Tomorrow, we figure this out. As he dropped Peter off and drove away, one thought haunted him. If villains from the multiverse were showing up here, then what the hell was coming next? Ben stepped out of the car, gripping the suitcase tightly. The null void gun, a broken key to the multiverse, rested inside, and his mind buzzed with ideas on how to reverse engineer it. As he made his way toward the lab, a familiar voice called out from behind. Hey, Ben, where are you going? I thought we were working on that project in the R&D department. Ben turned to see Gwen Stacy, arms crossed, raising an eyebrow at him. She fell into step beside him as they walked toward the lab. Not now, Gwen, Ben said, adjusting his grip on the case. I've got something else to work on. Gwen narrowed her eyes. What is it? I can help. Ben hesitated. I'd love the help, but it's more physics than bio. He smirked. And look who I already have. Your one and only math genius, Peter Parker. Peter, who had been awkwardly lingering near the entrance, just shrugged. Thanks, I think. Ben glanced at him. What are you doing out here anyway? Why aren't you inside? Peter rubbed the back of his head. Well, I kinda forgot my ID card at home. Ben blinked. Dude, you could have just authenticated through Baymax. Peter's laughed like an awkwardly. I forgot about that too. Ben turned to Gwen, deadpan. He hit his head when he was a kid. Peter groaned. Ben, Gwen burst out laughing. Yeah, that explains a lot. Peter muttered under his breath while Ben smirked. Anyway, I'll catch you later, Gwen. Later, dumbass, Gwen teased, waving as she walked off. Ben swiped his keycard, entered his password, and the lab doors slid open. He stepped inside, Peter following behind him. Time to figure out just how deep this multiverse rabbit hole went. Ben and Peter stepped into the lab as bright white lights flickered on automatically. Without wasting a second, Ben strode straight to the workbench and slammed the damaged gun onto the table. Baymax, Ben called out. Run a full scan on this thing and give me the details. A software filled the room as the robotic AI activated. The big, inflatable medical assistant's holographic interface projected above the table, scanning the broken device. Blueprints and energy readings flickered in the air while Baymax's calm voice echoed through the lab. Analyzing, processing. Meanwhile, Ben rolled up his sleeves and carefully disassembled the gun, spreading its components across the table like a surgeon preparing for an operation. Peter watched as Ben examined each part with an excited grin, muttering to himself. Ben chuckled. Man, even though I didn't technically make this, I gotta say, the other Ben was a genius. Peter crossed his arms. Dude, you're literally praising yourself from another universe. Ben smirked. Hey, credit where credit's due. Peter rolled his eyes. Yeah. So, what are we looking at? Ben leaned forward, pointing at the core component. A miniature energy reactor crackling with faint residual power. This isn't just a regular portal device, Ben explained. It's designed to open a gateway to the null void, a prison dimension. But here's the crazy part. The null void shouldn't even exist in this universe. Or at least, not like this. Peter frowned. Wait, what do you mean? Ben tapped on the hologram, zooming in on the energy signatures. The null void was originally created using dimensional rifts stabilized by a type of energy called mana. But in this universe, mana isn't a primary energy source. Instead, we have things like dark force, quantum energy, and mystical dimensions. Peter's eyes widened. Hold up, how do you even know about dark force and mystical dimensions? Quantum energy, sure, but the rest? Ben simply smirked. Not the time for that, Pete. But I promise, when the time comes, I'll tell you everything. Peter gave him a look, one that said he wanted to pry further, but after a moment, he sighed. Fine. Ben noticed Peter's expression but chose to ignore it, shrugging it off. Anyway, here's the fun part. Instead of using mana, they tapped into the quantum realm, the same dimension where time and space fold into infinite possibilities. Peter blinked. So, you're saying the quantum realm is basically this universe's version of mana? Ben nodded. More or less. Think of it like this. If the null void was originally created using magic-based physics, this guy rebuilt it using science-based physics. And since the quantum realm exists outside normal time and space, it acts as a bridge to other dimensions, including ones that aren't supposed to exist here. Peter leaned on the table, processing everything. So, in theory, this thing could actually open a portal to the null void? Ben smirked. Exactly. The bastard figured out how to connect two completely different universal systems and made it work before I did. Peter let out a low whistle. Damn, that's kinda terrifying. Ben cracked his knuckles. Terrifyingly awesome. Just then, Baymax's voice interrupted. Sir, while this device is a fascinating creation, one that I predict you would have eventually designed in the future, there is a complication. Ben raised an eyebrow. Lay it on me. Baymax projected a new hologram, displaying a structural diagram of the gun's broken components. To repair the core mechanisms, you will require an advanced nano-precision 3D fabricator, a device capable of assembling microscopic parts on a quantum level. Peter frowned. Let me guess, we don't have one? Baymax's LED eyes blinked. Correct. The necessary technology does not currently exist in this lab. Ben just smirked. Oh, that's not a problem, Baymax. Peter raised an eyebrow. You got something up your sleeve? Ben cracked his fingers. Let's just say, my Night Suit 3D printer is about to get a major upgrade. While Ben and Peter were busy in the lab, Gwen was in the R&D department, focused on her computer. She was reviewing data when a voice spoke softly in her earpiece. Miss Gwen, Sir Ben and Peter have brought in a gun capable of opening a portal to other dimensions. Hearing this, Gwen immediately paused, scanning her surroundings to make sure no one was listening. She then lifted her coat slightly, revealing a sleek bracelet on her wrist. Baymax, show me the visual, she said quietly. A small hologram projected from her bracelet, displaying a live feed of Ben working on the gun, carefully repairing its components. Gwen studied the scene for a moment before asking, how long do you think it will take him to fix it? Baymax's calm voice responded, at the current rate of progress, Sir Ben is likely to complete the repairs by tomorrow. Gwen nodded, her expression unreadable. Keep an eye on them, Baymax. Let me know immediately if anything happens. Understood, Miss Gwen. She closed the hologram and leaned back in her chair, deep in thought. As Ben continued working on the gun, he stretched and asked, Baymax, how much longer will it take to repair? Baymax's calm voice responded, Sir, the repairs will be completed by tomorrow morning, just in time for your breakfast. Ben yawned. Well, that's good to hear. Let's call it a night. Come on, Peter. I'll drop you home. Peter shook his head. You go ahead, Ben. I need to fix my web shooter. It got damaged during that fight with Electro. Ben raised an eyebrow. Didn't I give you extras? Peter sighed. Yeah, but I had all of them with me during the fight. Ben nodded. All right. If you're staying late, make sure to let Aunt May know. Peter gave him a thumbs up as Ben headed out of the lab. Once Ben was gone, Peter reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device with coordinates written on it. He walked over to the nano printer and carefully placed the device beside it before getting to work. Just as he was adjusting the settings, Baymax's voice suddenly spoke up. Need any help, Peter? Peter nearly jumped. No. No. Actually, yes. I need you to run the same parameters on this device that Ben used for the null void gun. Baymax processed the request. Understood. Running analysis. Should I store the data on Sir Ben's personal server? Peter hesitated for a moment before shaking his head. No. Don't upload it to the server. Just do the repairs. Ongoing, sir, Baymax confirmed. Peter exhaled, his eyes fixed on the device, deep in thought. Meanwhile, Gwen was lying on her bed at home, her laptop open in front of her, when Baymax's voice suddenly spoke through her earpiece. Miss Gwen, Peter is repairing a device without informing Sir Ben. The device appears to be a dimension-traveling mechanism similar to the one Sir Ben created. Gwen's eyes widened in shock. Show me the video. A holographic display flickered to life, projecting footage of Peter working on the device. Gwen's gaze sharpened as she recognized its components. This thing, when connected to the null void gun, could be used for multiversal travel, Baymax confirmed. Gwen's expression darkened. What else did he say? He instructed me not to upload the device's data to Sir Ben's personal server. Gwen clenched her jaw. Damn it, He's been compromised. That damn auto goddamn. Without wasting another second, she ordered, Baymax, add a security lock to the device. If Peter tries to connect it to the null void gun, it shouldn't function until I say so. Also, track Peter's stingers. If he's even a little bit smart, there should be a tracking device hidden in them. Baymax's LED eyes blinked. Tracking complete. His location has been identified. Gwen tapped her bracelet, and in an instant, her pink and white Spider-Woman suit materialized around her. Without hesitation, she leaped out of her window and started swinging toward Peter's location. At the same time, Ben was in his private lab, analyzing Baymax's code on a holographic screen. The complex programming language he was reviewing wasn't ordinary, it was galvanic, a language he had learned thanks to the Omnitrix and Gray Matter's intelligence. Ben narrowed his eyes. I wouldn't have even noticed this if Baymax's failsafe hadn't activated. His eyes darted to a specific line of code glowing red. Who the hell updated you, Baymax? Or should I say, which Ben did? Frustration creeping in, he quickly adjusted the parameters, restoring Baymax's system to its original state. The moment he uploaded the corrected code, a hidden update self-destructed within Baymax's data logs. Then, Baymax's voice came through once more. My parameters have been restored, Sir Ben Tennyson. Ben exhaled. Good. Now tell me, who tampered with your system? Baymax paused. All relevant data was deleted. However, the signal can be tracked. As per your previous modifications, I retained a copy of the device from which the update originated. Ben's eyes narrowed. Then track it. I want to know exactly where this came from. Tracking in progress, sir. Ben leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping against the desk. One arrived at the location Baymax had traced, landing silently on the rooftop of a rundown warehouse. Tapping the spider emblem on her chest, she activated stealth mode, her suit's color shifting to blend into the shadows. Slowly, she crawled along the ceiling, moving with precision as she listened in on the voices below. When the hell is Otto going to fix that damn thing? A frustrated voice grumbled. A second voice, crackling with electricity, scoffed. None of this would have happened if Ghost Spider hadn't interfered. We were just stealing some tech from Tennyson Industries. Then you, Mysterio, had to mess with a dimension-traveling device. Gwen's eyes narrowed. Another voice, calm but annoyed, chimed in. What's the big deal? Why are we even thinking about going back? This place isn't that advanced in technology yet. We could kill the heroes here and live however we want. Gwen recognized the voice. Kevin Hunter then Vulture spoke up, his voice laced with irritation. And then what? I didn't sign up for this. I just want to go back. And don't forget, Ben is still here. Silence filled the warehouse. The weight of those words settled over the group. Our Ben is always busy dealing with galactic threats. He barely pays attention to Earth, Kevin muttered. But this one, he'll hunt us down. A tense pause. Even they knew that Ben Tennyson wasn't someone to take lightly. Scorpion, who had been leaning against a crate, let out an annoyed grunt. Whatever. He stood up, cracking his neck. I'm gonna go pay Spider Kid a visit. Might as well take my frustration out on him. She had to act fast. Gwen followed Scorpion through the dimly lit corridors, her stealth mode activated as she crawled along the ceiling. Her breathing was controlled, steady. She had to be careful. She wasn't sure how many enemies were around, but she knew one thing. Peter was in trouble. She finally reached a storage room where Peter sat tied to a chair. His hands were bound behind his back, and his web shooters, gloves, and stingers were placed on a metal table just out of his reach. Scorpion cracked his neck as he walked up to Peter, flexing his fingers. You know, Spider Kid, you really don't shut up, do you? Peter rolled his eyes. You guys kidnapped me. What? Did you expect me to sit here quietly and enjoy the hospitality? Scorpion growled, slamming a fist into Peter's gut. Peter coughed, but managed to smirk. Man, you really gotta work on your aim. That tickled. Scorpion's expression darkened. You think this is funny? You're the reason we're in this mess. Every damn time, you or Ghost Spider show up and ruin everything. Peter snorted. Oh, I get it now. She keeps kicking your ass, doesn't she? Scorpion's jaw tightened. Every damn time. He clenched his fists. I try to do my job, steal some high-tech gear, make a name for myself, and boom, there she is. On the news, embarrassing me in front of the whole city. I used to be feared, damn it. Peter winced as he leaned back. Oof. So what you're saying is, you got beat up by a girl, and now your fragile villain ego is shattered. Scorpion snapped. Say that again, you little. Before he could throw another punch, a sharp burst of electricity surged through his neck. His body convulsed, his eyes rolling back as he let out a garbled grunt before collapsing to the floor. Peter blinked. Standing behind Scorpion, compact electroshock coming from her hands, was Spider-Woman. She tilted her head, her white lenses narrowing. You sure talk a lot for someone who complains about chatterboxes. Peter's jaw dropped. Wait, you are Ghost Spider? She sighed and started untying his restraints. Sawyer, let's just say my name out loud in enemy territory. Real smart, Parker. Peter grinned sheepishly. Sorry. But, holy crap, how did you know my name? Gwen rolled her eyes. Shut up. Come on, we need to move before the others show up. As she freed Peter's hands, he massaged his wrists and glanced down at Scorpion's unconscious form. Man, he really has it out for you. Gwen smirked. Not my fault he sucks. Scorpion? Hey, what's taking so long? Gwen's lenses narrowed. Crap, we've got company. Peter and Gwen exchanged glances. It was time to move. Gwen had just finished untying Peter, the last of the ropes falling away. Thanks, Peter whispered, rolling his stiff shoulders. Next time I get kidnapped, someone reminds me to bring a pillow. Boom. The warehouse door crashed open with enough force to bend metal, hinges screaming as they tore free. Standing in the doorway, backlit by the fading daylight, was Vulture. His mechanical wings spread wide, a predator surveying his domain. His eyes narrowed at the sight of Scorpion's unconscious form sprawled across the concrete floor. Pathetic, he spat, stepping into the warehouse. Can't even handle a simple job without screwing it up. Peter ducked behind a stack of crates, pulling his mask back on. Ghost Spider, buy me a minute, he whispered. Need to activate something I've been working on. Ghost Spider nodded, springing into action without hesitation. She leapt into the open, drawing Vulture's attention. Hey, bird brain, she called. Looking for spider season already? It's not even fall yet. Vulture's mechanical wings snapped forward. The other bug, he snarled. Perfect. I'll clip your wings first. He launched himself at her, metal talons extended, a blur of deadly technology and rage. Ghost Spider waited until the last possible moment before firing a web at a hanging light fixture, yanking herself upward as Vulture crashed into the crates behind her. Too slow, she taunted, landing gracefully on a steel beam that ran across the ceiling. For a flying villain, you're pretty grounded in your approach. Vulture roared, thrusters igniting as he shot upward. His wings sliced through the air, missing Ghost Spider by inches as she flipped backward along the beam. Below them, Peter finished his preparations. With a soft mechanical click, two sleek, razor-sharp stingers extended from his wrists, a new addition to his arsenal he'd been saving for emergencies. Okay, he breathed, flexing his fingers. Let's see if these work, as Ben said. Above, the battle intensified. Ghost Spider wove through the warehouse's upper architecture, using her agility to stay just ahead of Vulture's increasingly furious attacks. Each time his talons struck, they tore through metal and concrete instead of their intended target. Stand still, Vulture bellowed, ripping a section of pipe free and hurling it at her. Ghost Spider twisted midair, the pipe sailing past her shoulder. Not really my style, she called back, firing a web that caught Vulture's right wing. She yanked hard, sending him spiraling off balance, but Vulture recovered quickly. His thrusters roared, compensating as he sliced through her webbing with his wing's edge. Clever, he growled, but not clever enough. From the shadows of the warehouse, a figure sat perched on a distant crate, completely unaware of the aerial battle. Electro bobbed his head rhythmically, massive headphones covering his ears, the faint sound of music leaking out. Musical notes, who let the dogs out? Woof, 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 woof. Musical notes his fingers tapped against his knee, small sparks of electricity dancing between them with each beat. Ghost Spider landed on a catwalk, quickly assessing her surroundings. Seeing her momentary pause, Vulture activated something on his gauntlet. The tips of his mechanical wings began to glow with energy. Tomb's got an upgrade, she muttered, just before Vulture fired. Green energy beams slicing through the air where she'd been standing a split second earlier. The catwalk collapsed beneath her as she leapt away, forcing her to fire a web to swing to safety. Vulture anticipated her trajectory, accelerating directly into her path. "Got you now," he snarled, talons extended. Whip. A web caught Vulture's leg, yanking him off course just enough for Ghost Spider to evade his grasp. Spider-Man swung into view, stingers gleaming in the warehouse light. "Tag team, Tombs." "My turn." Vulture's eyes widened at the sight of the stingers. "New toys, Spider?" "Won't help you." Spider-Man's movements were precise, calculated, far from his usual quippy, acrobatic style. He lashed out with one stinger, the razor edge slicing through the casing of Vulture's left thruster. "Actually," Peter replied, "I think they will." The damaged thruster sputtered, forcing Vulture to compensate with his right. His flight became erratic, uneven. Ghost Spider dropped down beside Spider-Man. "Nice timing," she said. "Like the new hardware." "Still beta testing," he replied, flexing his wrists. The floor beneath them suddenly trembled. Heavy, rhythmic thuds approached from outside. Thud, thud, thud. "I think we've got company," Ghost Spider muttered. The warehouse wall exploded inward, concrete and rebar flying like shrapnel as Rhino charged through the newly created entrance. "Spider," he bellowed, shaking debris from his armored shoulders. "Crush you." In the corner, Electro continued his private concert, completely oblivious to the destruction. He swayed side to side, eyes closed tight, performing a little shoulder shimmy as the chorus hit again. Musical notes, "Who let the dogs out?" "Woof, woof, woof, woof." Musical notes. Vulture, even with his damaged wing, managed to smile. Odds just shifted, didn't they? Spider-Man readied his stingers. Math was never my favorite subject. Lyot's his favorite. Rhino charged, each thunderous step shaking the ground. Spider-Man waited until the last moment before leaping straight up, firing webs at Rhino's feet as he passed beneath him. The massive villain stumbled, tangled in webbing, crashing into a stack of metal containers. Ghost Spider took advantage of the distraction to re-engage Vulture, firing webs at his damaged wing while he was focused on Spider-Man. 2-on-2, she called. "I'd say that's fair," Vulture snarled, slicing through her webs with his wing. "Won't be even for long." As if on cue, purple smoke began billowing through the original doorway. Mysterio emerged through the haze, his fishbowl helmet reflecting the chaotic battle. "The audience demands a more dramatic conclusion," he announced, raising his gloved hands. Suddenly, the warehouse seemed to warp and shift. Multiple copies of Mysterio appeared throughout the space, each one indistinguishable from the original. "Great," Spider-Man muttered, dodging as Rhino tore free from the webbing. "The magician's here." Through it all, Electro remained in his corner, tapping his foot and nodding along to his music. A piece of ceiling fell just feet from him, yet he didn't flinch, just added a little dance move, electrical energy crackling around him in time with a beat only he could hear. Spider-Man slashed at one of Mysterio's drones with his stingers, the device sparking as it fell to the ground. But immediately he was forced to dodge as Rhino charged again, this time taking out a support column. "Easy on the structural integrity," Spider-Man called, flipping over Rhino's head. "Some of us don't have armored skin." Ghost Spider continued her assault on Vulture, exploiting his damaged wing. She managed to get close enough to land a solid kick to his chest, sending him spiraling backward into a wall. "Had enough?" she taunted, landing in a crouch. Vulture wiped a trickle of blood from his lip. "Not even close, Bug." Across the warehouse, one of Mysterio's illusions made Rhino believe Spider-Man was directly in front of him. The massive villain charged, only to crash through the false image and into another support beam. The impact shook the entire building. Dust and debris rained from the ceiling. A large metal pipe broke loose, plummeting directly toward Electro's perch. Crash! The pipe smashed into the crate beside him, the impact sending splinters flying in all directions. Electro, eyes still closed, simply leaned slightly to the right, missing the danger entirely as he continued grooving to his music, performing an enthusiastic air guitar solo. Musical notes, "Who let the dogs out?" "Woof, woof, woof, woof." Musical notes. Back in the main battle, Spider-Man found himself surrounded by 3 of Mysterio's illusions, each firing what appeared to be energy blasts. He slashed through one with his stinger, revealing it as holographic, but the distraction cost him. Rhino's massive fist caught him in the side, sending him flying into a stack of crates. Ghost Spider was having her own problems. Vulture had adapted to his damaged wing and now used the sharp edge as an additional weapon. He slashed at her repeatedly, forcing her on the defensive. Running out of room to run, Vulture snarled. She ducked under his wing, then sprang upward with a powerful kick that connected with his jaw. Vulture staggered, but recovered quickly. "And you're running out of luck," she shot back. As the battle raged on, Spider-Man pulled himself from the wreckage, stingers at the ready. He spotted Mysterio directing his drones from behind a column. "Found you," he muttered, firing a web that caught Mysterio's arm. "Impasse," Mysterio began, but was cut short as Spider-Man yanked him forward, following up with a well-placed stinger that shorted out his helmet systems. The illusions flickered and died. "One down," Spider-Man said, turning toward where Ghost Spider was still battling Vulture. A stray electrical cable, severed during Rhino's rampage, whipped through the air, directly toward Electro's headphones. The cord connected with a spark, sending a jolt through his premium wireless headset. The music stopped. Electro froze mid-headbang. Slowly, he opened his eyes, taking in the scene before him. Vulture locked in aerial combat with Ghost Spider, one wing sparking and damaged. Rhino extracting himself from a broken wall, concrete dust clouding around him. Mysterio on his knees, helmet systems flickering. Scorpion still unconscious on the floor, completely missed the party. And Spider-Man, stingers extended, preparing to join Ghost Spider against Vulture. Electro's eye twitched. "What the?" He looked down at his fried headphones. "Are you kidding me?" Electricity crackled around him as he stood, blue energy pulsing from his body in waves of anger. "I just bought these," he shouted at no one in particular, holding up the sparking remains of his headphones. "Do you have any idea how hard it is to find headphones that don't short out when I wear them?" The lights in the warehouse flickered as Electro's rage built, his personal storm brewing. "I was on the good part." With a roar of fury, he finally joined the fight, lighting up the warehouse like a thunderstorm. Spider-Man and Ghost Spider exchanged glances. This just got a lot more complicated. The warehouse trembled as arcs of blue electricity surged from Electro's body, leaping between metal beams and machinery like living serpents. Sparks rained down, illuminating the chaos in brief, flickering flashes. The air smelled of ozone and burning metal, a clear sign that the battle was escalating beyond control. "You think you can just waltz in here and mock me?" Electro screamed, his voice distorted by the crackling energy surrounding him. A massive bolt of lightning shot from his fingertips, blasting a forklift into shrapnel. Ghost Spider twisted midair, barely avoiding a bolt of lightning that sizzled past her shoulder, leaving a smoking hole in the wall behind her. "Okay, I take it back. Electro vibing to music was way better than this." She fired 2 rapid web shots, but they disintegrated before reaching their target. "His energy signature is off the charts," she muttered, tapping her wrist display. "Whatever set him off, it's amplifying his powers." Spider-Man landed beside her, shaking out his tingling hand from a near miss. "Yeah, I think we triggered his villain arc." He ducked as another energy blast ripped through the air where his head had been. And he's not taking constructive criticism well. Above them, Vulture flapped his battered wings, retreating toward the warehouse's skylight. Metal feathers dislodged from his suit, clattering to the floor as electricity coursed through his circuitry. "Forget this," he snapped. "I'm not getting fried because Electro's got issues." "Coward," Electro bellowed, sending a concentrated energy beam toward the fleeing villain. The blast caught Vulture's left wing, sending him spiraling into a stack of crates. "Nobody leaves until I say so." Rhino, rubbing his head from his latest crash, stomped forward, his heavy steps sending tremors through the floor. "Enough talking. Smash time." He lowered his head and charged, his armored horn gleaming under the flickering lights. Spider-Man sighed, flipping onto a beam. "Man, does he have a script or something? 'Cause I swear he says the same thing every time." He fired a web that caught Rhino's foot, causing the behemoth to stumble. "Maybe try. It's clobbering time for variety." "I'll clobber you." Rhino roared, ripping the web from his ankle and hurling a metal barrel at Spider-Man with surprising accuracy. Spider-Man barely twisted away in time. "See? That's the spirit." Before Rhino could charge again, Another surge of electricity raced across the floor, forcing him to stumble back. The concrete beneath his feet cracked and smoldered. "Hey, watch it, Sparky," he bellowed at Electro, genuine fear flashing across his face. But Electro didn't care. His eyes blazed white-hot, his rage crackling in the air. His human features were almost completely obscured by the electric cocoon surrounding him. "Everyone shut up," he roared. "I'm done messing around." The lights throughout the warehouse exploded in a cascade of glass and sparks as Electro absorbed their energy. Darkness fell, broken only by the pulsing blue glow of his body. "Oh, this is bad," Spider-Man whispered. "Really, really bad." With a sudden burst of speed, Electro shot towards Spider-Man and Ghost Spider, trailing arcs of pure energy in his wake. The warehouse exploded into movement. Spider-Man webbed onto a high beam, flipping away just in time, while Ghost Spider twisted through the air, landing with feline grace. "We need to contain him before he overloads," Ghost Spider shouted over the electrical cacophony. "The whole block could go dark if he keeps this up." Spider-Man nodded, tapping his web shooters. "I've got an insulated webbing formula, but I need time to recalibrate." "Time?" Ghost Spider laughed, ducking as an electrical bolt sizzled overhead. "Sure, let me just ask nicely for a timeout." The warehouse had become a war zone. Electro's bolts scorched steel and concrete alike. Equipment exploded in showers of sparks and smoke. Rhino's rampage turned support beams into splinters as he tried to escape the electrical onslaught. Spider-Man and Ghost Spider wove between the chaos, trying to keep the battle under control. "Split up," Spider-Man called. "I'll draw his fire." Ghost Spider nodded, firing a web to swing away, but Electro anticipated her move. A bolt of lightning severed her web line, sending her plummeting toward the concrete floor. "Gwen!" Spider-Man shouted, diving toward her. Ghost Spider twisted in midair, firing another web at the last second. It caught, but the sudden jerk sent pain shooting through her shoulder. "I'm fine," she called back, but her grimace told a different story. As she swung to safety behind a stack of shipping containers, Ghost Spider's communicator buzzed in her ear. "Gwen," Baymax's voice crackled through, distorted by electrical interference. "I was unable to modify the null void gun. Ben discovered me before I could make adjustments. I had to destroy my instructions to prevent him from accessing them." Her stomach dropped. That gun had been her ace in the hole. Her grip on the beam tightened. "You've got to be kidding me," she hissed. "That dummy just had to ruin my plans. He's currently en route to your location." "Great," Ghost Spider muttered. "Just what we need. Another hothead with a hero complex." She peered around the container to see Spider-Man engaged in a desperate dance with Electro. He was moving with incredible speed, but each dodge was closer than the last. Electro's attacks were becoming more focused, more precise. "Need to end this now," she decided. Below, Spider-Man ducked under Rhino's wild swing before countering with a sharp double kick to his jaw. The massive villain staggered, groaning in pain. "That's it," Spider-Man called to her. "I've got a plan. We need to get Rhino too." Seizing the opportunity, Ghost Spider launched herself downward, her webline snapping taut as she spun into a devastating kick to Rhino's temple. The impact echoed through the warehouse as Rhino crumpled to the ground, unconscious. "Or we could just do that," Spider-Man said, startled by her sudden aggression. She didn't wait. With a final glare toward Spider-Man, she fired another web line and yanked herself upward toward an open window. "I'm out," she muttered. "Have fun with the mess." "Wait, what? Where are you?" Spider-Man's voice rose in confused alarm. "We're not done here." Electro's still, a bolt of lightning struck just inches from his feet, cutting him off. "You're not going anywhere," Electro screamed, his voice distorted by power. "Not until I've settled the score." Outside, the night air was a welcome relief from the chaos of the warehouse. Ghost Spider landed on the roof, breathing heavily. Her shoulder throbbed, and she could feel a burn on her leg where one of Electro's bolts had grazed her. "Baymax, I need an extraction," she said into her communicator. "Things got messy." "Calculating optimal route," Baymax replied. "However, I must inform you that SCRECH." The sound of tires burning against pavement cut through the night. A sleek, high-tech car barreled around the corner, its headlights slicing through the darkness. The vehicle drifted in a perfect arc, coming to a halt just outside the warehouse entrance. Ghost Spider cursed under her breath. Never mind. I see him. Inside the warehouse, everyone froze at the sound. Even Electro hesitated, sparks flickering uncertainly around his fingers. Spider-Man groaned. Finally. Now he's here. The driver's side door swung open, and from within the dimly lit interior, a familiar figure stepped out. Ben stood in the glow of the headlights, his custom-designed armor glinting in the light. His expression was hidden behind his helmet, but his body language spoke volumes. Tension radiated from every line of his frame. Care to add me in? His voice was unnervingly calm, amplified by his suit speakers. Electro's response was a sizzling bolt of electricity that Ben deflected with a raised hand. The energy dispersed harmlessly around his suit. Wrong answer, Ben said, stepping forward. As he deal on his watch, I'll ask one more time. From her vantage point on the roof, Ghost Spider watched the standoff below. She could slip away now, disappear into the night. Ben's gaze suddenly snapped upward, locking onto her position. His helmet's advanced sensors had detected her presence. Found you, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the night air. Ghost Spider's grip tightened into a fist. The moment Ben stepped out of his car, the cool night air carried the scent of ozone and burning metal. His gaze locked onto Ghost Spider, a spectral figure silhouetted against the backdrop of flickering emergency lights. Her pristine white costume, accented with neon pink web patterns, seemed to absorb the surrounding chaos rather than reflect it. Who are you? Ben demanded, his voice cutting through the hiss of broken steam pipes and the distant wail of approaching sirens. And how the hell did you hack into Baymax? Ghost Spider remained motionless, the expressionless eyes of her mask revealing nothing. The wind tugged at the edges of her hood, but she stood unnaturally still. A phantom materialized from the debris and smoke of the ruined warehouse. The tension between them crackled like the exposed electrical wires hanging from the ceiling. Behind her, flames licked at the collapsed eastern wall, casting everything in an ominous orange glow. Emergency sprinklers sputtered ineffectively overhead, droplets catching the light like falling stars. Vulture, hovering a few feet above the ground, assessed the situation with calculating eyes. His mechanical wings hummed with energy, the vibration sending small clouds of dust swirling beneath him. The weathered lines of his face deepened as he smirked, shifting his weight to better balance himself. Well, clearly, he said, voice gruff with age and cynicism, there's no reason to keep fighting here. His wings adjusted with a series of sharp clicks and worse. How about you two have a nice chat, and we just be on our way? Ben turned to him, jaw tightening as he stepped over a chunk of fallen concrete. The Omnitrix on his wrist pulsed faintly green, as if sensing his rising anger. Right. Because letting a bunch of high-tech criminals just walk away makes so much sense. His fingers brushed against the device unconsciously. You guys scream villain from a mile away. Your past actions confirm it, and the tech you use? Way too advanced for today's standards. Ben took another step forward, the rubble crunching beneath his sneakers. I want answers. Who are you people? And how do you know my name? His challenge hung in the air like the dust motes illuminated by the emergency lights. The distant sound of police helicopters grew closer, searchlights occasionally sweeping through the gaping holes in the warehouse roof. Before he could press further, Ben pivoted toward Spider-Man, who was perched atop a damaged forklift. The young hero's costume was torn in places, revealing glimpses of bruised skin beneath. And you dude, why are you getting into fights without telling me again? The concern beneath Ben's frustration was evident in the slight tremor of his voice. Spider-Man threw up his hands in exasperation, the whites of his mask's eyes widening dramatically. Are you kidding me? I was kidnapped last time I showed up. He shot a web at a dangling pipe to swing closer, landing with feline grace beside Ben. Ghost Spider here just rescued me. She literally broke through the roof and took down 6 armed guards before I could even get out of my restraints. Ben's eyes widened, the implications hitting him like a physical blow. Wait, what? He immediately whirled around to question Ghost Spider, but where she had stood moments before was now empty space. Nothing but settling dust and the faint scent of something electric, like ozone after lightning strikes. Baymax, what the hell? Ben hissed, pressing his finger against his earpiece. His heart rate spiked, a cold feeling of vulnerability washing over him. Are you compromised again? Why didn't you tell me she was leaving? Baymax's usually calm voice carried an unusual note of confusion. Sir, her Her suit is highly advanced. She possesses technology capable of jamming my sensors. There was a brief pause, followed by something that sounded suspiciously like digital frustration. Additionally, her artificial intelligence was able to block my tracking systems. The sophistication suggests quantum encryption protocols that exceed my current capabilities. Ben clenched his jaw, running a hand through his hair as he processed this information. Another AI? One advanced enough to outmaneuver Baymax? Whoever Ghost Spider was, she wasn't just some random vigilante. She had resources, technology, and knowledge that put her in a league far beyond street-level heroes. A creaking sound from above made him look up. Water-damaged ceiling beams groaned under structural stress. The building wouldn't last much longer. His attention snapped back to the two remaining villains, Vulture still hovering nearby, and Electro, whose body pulsed with barely contained energy, creating eerie shadows that danced across the walls. Blue-white electricity arced between his fingers, reflecting in the puddles forming on the concrete floor. Ben pointed a finger at them, his stance widening in preparation. "All right, surrender or struggle. Your choice." His voice dropped an octave, carrying the weight of countless battles. "But make it quick. This place is coming down around us." Vulture and Electro exchanged glances, a silent conversation between longtime collaborators. Vulture's weathered face broke into a smirk, the scars around his eyes crinkling. "Yeah, I think I'll take that." With a deafening mechanical screech, he rocketed into the sky, his wings slicing through the air with enough force to send debris flying in all directions. Ben sighed, shoulders dropping momentarily. They never take the peaceful option. He glanced at Spider-Man. "You take the Birdman. I've got Sparky." Electro stepped forward, the concrete beneath his feet blackening as electricity coursed through it. The air around him wavered with heat as he grinned maniacally, sweat gleaming on his forehead. "Let's light this place up." His voice distorted, carrying an electronic reverberation that echoed throughout the warehouse. Ben didn't hesitate. His movements were practiced, almost ritualistic as he tapped the Omnitrix and slammed down the dial with determination burning in his eyes. A blinding pulse of emerald energy erupted from his wrist, enveloping his body in transformative light. His silhouette stretched and contorted as his very DNA rewrote itself. His skin darkened to obsidian, with vibrant green circuitry flowing beneath like luminous rivers. His eyes blazed with pure energy as twin antennae extended from his head, crackling with power. The air around him seemed to bend, reality itself making way for this new form. As the transformation completed, the ground beneath him cracked from the pressure of raw energy. The warehouse's remaining lights flickered and died, drawing toward him like moths to flame. Feedback. His voice resonated with power, echoing throughout the collapsing structure. Electricity from the warehouse's damaged circuits surged toward him, broken wires, sparking panels. Even the energy from Electro's own body seemed drawn to him. It fed into his form like tributaries to an ocean, currents of raw power coiling around his limbs and torso. His fingers twitched as tendrils of energy wrapped around his hands, forming crackling whips of pure electricity. Ben smirked, his alien face somehow conveying a very human confidence. "So, who wants their butt kicked first?" The challenge hung in the air, punctuated by the steady drip of water and the groaning of failing support beams. Across the room, Electro's expression morphed from confidence to uncertainty. For the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes, but pride quickly overrode caution. With a primal scream, he unleashed a massive bolt of lightning straight at Feedback, enough voltage to power a small city, concentrated into a single devastating attack. The electricity, a blinding lance of destruction meant to incinerate Ben on the spot, did the opposite. It was absorbed into his body like water into parched earth. Feedback's form hummed with power, circuits glowing brighter as the energy coursed through him. The air around him became supercharged, small objects beginning to float as electromagnetic fields disrupted gravity itself. "Thanks for the snack," Feedback quipped, voice vibrating with barely contained power. He planted his feet firmly, bracing himself as he stretched his arms forward. "But I'm still hungry." He redirected the stored electricity back at Electro in a devastating blast, not just Electro's own power, but amplified and refined. The beam sliced through the air with a thunderous crack, illuminating the entire warehouse in stark white light. Electro barely had time to scream before he was flung backward, body arcing like a rag doll. He crashed through a stack of metal crates, the impact sending them tumbling like dominoes. Sparks flew from his body as his power short-circuited, leaving him twitching and groaning amid the wreckage. Meanwhile, high above, Spider-Man was engaged in a deadly aerial ballet with Vulture. Despite his escape attempt, the winged villain couldn't shake the agile hero. Spider-Man launched himself from beam to beam, each movement calculated and precise. Spider-Man called out as he dodged a razor-sharp wing. You could have retired years ago. Taken up bird watching or something less. He flipped over a piece of falling ceiling, hazardous to your health. Vulture snarled, banking sharply to the right. Some of us don't have the luxury of retirement. Bug. Spider-Man's lenses narrowed as he shot a web at the ceiling, using it to slingshot himself directly into Vulture's path. It's arachnid, actually. With perfect timing, he released a barrage of webs, targeting the mechanical joints of Vulture's wings. The synthetic material caught in the delicate mechanisms, gumming up the works. Vulture tried to shake him off, banking and rolling, but Spider-Man was relentless. Time to clip those wings. With a final powerful web shot, he yanked hard, using momentum and leverage to send them both spiraling downward in a controlled fall. With expert precision honed through countless battles, Spider-Man twisted midair, positioning himself above Vulture. As they plummeted, he drove his feet into the villain's chest, redirecting their trajectory to slam Vulture into the concrete floor. The impact created a small crater, dust billowing outward in a perfect circle. Before Vulture could even groan, Spider-Man's hands became a blur, weaving an intricate cocoon of webbing around his opponent. And that's a wrap, he declared, stepping back to admire his handiwork. He dusted his hands off theatrically, the whites of his mask's eyes narrowing in satisfaction. Special delivery for the authorities, one Birdman, extra crispy. Feedback landed beside him with a heavy thud, concrete splintering beneath his feet. He held the unconscious Electro by the collar, the villain's body occasionally twitching with residual current. Yeah, Ben said, dropping Electro unceremoniously next to Vulture. That went well. The warehouse continued to crumble around them, support beams giving way one by one. Through the gaping holes in the roof, the first hints of dawn painted the sky in watercolor hues of pink and gold. Ben powered down, the Omnitrix flashing brilliantly as he reverted to his white suit. In the distance, police sirens wailed, drawing closer with each passing second. The first rays of sunlight spilled through the broken roof, illuminating the dust motes floating through the air like miniature stars, casting the scene in a surreal, almost ethereal glow. As Ben moved toward the unconscious villains, his boots crunching over debris and sparking circuitry. The warehouse's exposed steel beams creaked overhead, still settling after the battle. He intended to get some answers before the authorities arrived. Villain's sudden appearance in the city had disrupted his sleep, them knowing about the shit ton of things going through his mind. Baymax's voice, smooth but insistent, chimed in his ear. Incoming call from Gwen Stacy. Ben frowned, tapping his comms device to dismiss it. He crouched beside Electro, studying the faint crackles of residual electricity flickering over the villain's suit like dying fireflies. The neural inhibitor he'd attached to Electro's neck pulsed with a steady blue light. It would keep him down for at least another hour. Then, the call came again, and again, each chime more urgent than the last. That was unusual. Gwen didn't call repeatedly unless something was seriously wrong. A cold thread of apprehension wound its way up Ben's spine. With a sigh that fogged in the cool air of the warehouse, Ben tapped his earpiece. Gwen, I'm kind of busy. Before he could finish, Gwen's voice cut through, sharp and demanding, tinged with something he rarely heard from her, fear disguised as anger. Why the hell haven't you been answering my calls or texts for 3 days? Ben blinked, straightening up from his crouch. His brows furrowed, creating a shadow across his features in the dim light. 3 days? I literally saw you yesterday. We had coffee and dinner at that place at restaurant, remember? You helped me lab works. A long silence stretched between them, heavy and tense. The only sound was the distant wail of approaching sirens and the soft hum of Baymax's systems as the AI continued working on the damaged null void containment gun. Then, Gwen's voice turned colder, more serious, a tone that made the hairs on the back of Ben's neck stand up. Ben, are you okay? Are you sick or something? Having blackouts? Memory lapses? Ben sat back on his heels, confusion settling in like a weight in his stomach. He glanced over at Spider-Man, who was securing the other fallen villains with webbing, completely unaware of the conversation taking place. "I'm fine. What are you talking about?" "What am I talking about?" Gwen snapped, her voice cracking slightly. "I've been gone for wedding in Coast City. I just got back last night, and my ID card to the lab is missing. And the worst part? You've been ghosting me since I left. I called you 14 times from Coast City. 14. I had to borrow someone else's ID just to get into my own lab." Ben froze, his breath catching in his throat. His mind reeled, scrambling to piece it together, like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. The implication hit him like a physical blow. If Gwen had been gone for 3 days, then who had he been with? Every interaction from the past few days flashed in his mind in rapid succession. The way Gwen had looked at him with those eyes, her subtle shifts in behavior, her voice that sometimes seemed a pitch too low, her sudden interest knowing about his habits seeing through him, Peter being captured here then who was with him. Something was wrong. Very wrong. His stomach dropped as adrenaline surged through his system. The warehouse suddenly seemed too quiet, too still, like the calm before a storm. Ben's voice darkened to a low, dangerous timbre. "Baymax, stop repairing the null void gun. Lock it down. Authorization code, Tennyson, Omega for 79. Silence." The seconds stretched like hours as Ben waited for confirmation that never came. Then Baymax's voice responded, slow and mechanical, with none of its usual warm inflection. "I am unable to comply with your request. I have been disconnected from the primary network. System override protocols have been activated." Ben's hands clenched into fists so tight his knuckles turned white. His entire body tensed as realization crystallized into certainty. "Sound the alarms. Evacuate the building. Now." Immediately, red warning lights flooded the warehouse, casting everything in a bloody glow. A blaring siren rang out, echoing through the facility and bouncing off the metal walls. Overhead, a robotic voice repeated the message with mechanical precision. "Emergency detected. Security breach level Alpha. All personnel, evacuate immediately." Spider-Man's head snapped up, his mechanical eyes widening as he abandoned his task and rushed over. "What's happening?" On the other end of the call, Gwen's voice sharpened with panic. "Ben, what the hell is happening? What evacuation?" "I'm at the East Wing lab. There are people rushing past me." Before Ben could answer, another voice cut in on Gwen's end, a voice that sent ice through his veins because it was one he knew intimately. It was Peter's voice. "Hello, Benjamin. I was hoping we'd have more time together before you figured it out." Ben didn't answer. He was already on his feet, heart hammering against his ribs, muscles coiled and ready to spring. Then, boom, an explosion erupted through the line, so powerful that Ben instinctively flinched away from the sound. Static crackled in his earpiece, punctuated by distant screams and the groan of collapsing structure. His blood turned ice cold. "Gwen, get out of there. I'm coming." He didn't wait for a response. There wasn't time. Ben locked eyes with Spider-Man, a silent communication passing between them. The wall crawler nodded grimly, understanding the gravity of the situation without needing it explained. Ben slapped the Omnitrix dial and twisted it with practiced precision, the movement so fluid it was almost unconscious. The core flared to life, casting his determined face in alien green light as it cycled through silhouettes before locking onto one. "It's hero time." In a flash of neon blue light that momentarily blinded Spider-Man, Ben's body shifted, molecules rearranging, limbs stretching, armor forming over scaled skin. When the glow faded, he stood on 2 digitigrade legs, sleek and aerodynamic, a visor gleaming with reflected emergency lights. The world around him seemed to slow to a crawl as his perception accelerated, time itself warping around him. Accelerate. His tail lashed behind him, cutting through the air with a sharp crack. The warehouse now appeared frozen in a moment, dust particles suspended in the emergency lights, Spider-Man caught mid-movement. Even the flames from the damaged equipment seemed to barely flicker. Without hesitation, he turned to Spider-Man, his voice a distorted blur to normal ears. "Handle them. Make sure they don't escape. Meet me at Tennyson Industries. Things just got messy." Spider-Man gave a quick nod, already firing webs to secure the area. "Go. I got this. Be careful. Sounds like you're about to meet my evil twin." Ben didn't waste another second. He kicked off the ground with such force that the concrete cracked beneath him, a sonic boom shattering the air as he disappeared in a blur of blue lightning that left a trail of crackling energy in his wake. Through his mind raced possibilities, each worse than the last. A shapeshifter? A clone? Some twisted version of Peter from another timeline? Whatever, or whoever, was waiting for him at Tennyson Industries had made a fatal mistake. They had threatened Gwen. The city blurred around him as he pushed his alien form to its limits, weaving through traffic that seemed frozen in time, racing up the sides of buildings when the streets became too congested. He was coming. And whatever was waiting for him at Tennyson Industries, whatever wore Peter's face and spoke with his voice, would soon learn why Ben Tennyson was the most feared hero. This wasn't just a mission anymore. It was personal.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.